We are ready when you're ready.
All right, you are on.
Okay. Good evening. Today's September 18th. Welcome to the Select Board meeting. I'm John Martin, Francine Tishman, and Jim Labrie to my left, and Matt Rowland and Maureen Groden to my right. We're being telecast live as well as we're being recorded for future viewing. If you can join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Glad to see we're all here today. First thing we have is the election of vice chair, and we left that from last meeting because we didn't have a full board. When Charlie left the board, he vacated the position of vice chair, so we need to elect a new vice chair. So does anybody have any nominations, or would they like to volunteer?
I'll nominate Maureen.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a nomination for Maureen and a second. Any discussion? Maureen, are you okay with that?
I am.
Okay. No more discussion. Hear a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, Ed, this term will go, how long, Ed?
What's that?
This term will go until next May,
Until the board reorganizes.
and then we'll reorganize at the annual meeting. Okay.
Well, you could theoretically reorganize the week at the next meeting after the elections.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, no problem.
that would be towards the end of May, beginning of August.
So appointments, we have none. Hearings, we have none. Reports. Ed, would you like to start us off?
Certainly. Okay. Updates. I have confirmed with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission that with the change in Select Board membership from the recent special election, that Charlie Kinnicky no longer is able to serve on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO. The current alternate representative, who is Roger Fuller, a Select Board member from Chesterfield, will serve until there is a new election to fill that slot. There will be a discussion from the current Pioneer Valley MPO members when and how to recruit and elect onto the MPO board another duly elected Select Board member from among the 17 towns which comprise the region's western tier, which consists of Blandford, Chester, Chesterfield, Cummington, Goshen, Granville, Hatfield, Huntington, Middlefield, Montgomery, Plainfield, Russell, Southampton, Talland, Westhampton, Williamsburg, and Worthington. The pre-bid meeting for the Labrie Field irrigation system installation and field repairs was held this morning. There'll probably be an addendum to the bid put out for clarification of a couple of details on the project which came out today. The Mass Municipal Association will be holding their fall legislative breakfast in the area on October 26th, either in Sturbridge or Sunderland from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. If any of you would like to attend, please let me know, and I will register you for that breakfast meeting. I have been informed by the Historical Commission that Christina Madsen will represent them on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Michael Rosenberg has submitted an application to serve on a board or committee along with his resume to be considered for an at-large appointment to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So far, he's the only one that has applied. I will be attending an all-day seminar on October 4th at the Log Cabin in Holyoke on what is new in municipal law, which is sponsored by the Department of Revenue. Francine Tishman will also be attending that seminar. I have received the information on the Conan Park Pavilion roof replacement from the Park Commission. I will put a request for quotes together and put it out to vendors and advertise it on combis along with the request for quotes for the zipped barn roof. Upcoming, the next Board of Selectmen meeting is Tuesday, October 2nd at 6 PM, and then on Tuesday, October 16th and October 30th at 6 PM. The November Select Board meetings are to be determined. Thank you very much.
I've got a couple questions, but anybody else first?
I have some more information to add to what he said, but you go ahead.
Okay, just going back to the MPO, obviously they're gonna go through the process, but could you make sure we're informed on the process? 'Cause I think one of us wants to be involved, I'm not sure who yet, but
Tim Brennan did say that he would get back to us
Good.
when that came up,
good,
so,
then we can
Let us
discuss
know
it.
when the election will be?
yes.
Thanks.
Okay, good. And the other thing, on the MPI, we've got 2 more people serving. Do we have a completed list yet of who?
I sent out to the required, I sent an email to the required committees for representation, and I've heard back from Historical, which is Christina Madsen, the Planning Commission, Cindy Palmer, and the Conservation Commission, who was John Hardy McAuliffe as their representative. I've made several attempts by email with no phone number for the chair for the Housing Authority, and I've had no response. And I've had no response from the Parks Commission. And just very happy that Mike Rosenberg has agreed to serve, has to submit papers to serve as an at-large representative. So the plan is, knowing that some of these committees only meet once a month, that we would schedule our first meeting sometime after October 15th, because that would give them the month from the time I sent the notice out till now. So hopefully I'll hear from everyone and we'll get on board as soon as possible.
Are you,
Report back.
are you planning, or do you want one of us to go to the Housing and Parks, the next meeting, just to reemphasize?
Yeah. Yes.
Which of those?
Either one. I mean, I would go to both. I've made phone calls, I've left messages, but in the instance of the Housing Authority, I only have an email address.
Is
and
that
no
Jenica
response.
Reynolds?
Pardon?
Jenica Reynolds?
Yes.
So right now, they only meet as needed, and there is a tentative date for October 22nd where they're planning that meeting with the builders to talk about barriers to affordable housing in this town. So right now, there's been a lot of emails that I've been included in about that potential meeting. So right now, there's a 3-person board, a brand-new person in May, Chuck Kinnicky, Charlie's son, and Jenica Reynolds. I don't have her phone number, but I've been involved in emails back and forth,
Okay.
so. But there's been no meeting so they'd have to contact, they're probably gonna have a meeting to plan that event.
All right, so we can talk later.
Okay,
Because I got the information, Janine didn't have the number either, so I don't know where else to go. I looked at White Pages, I had no luck there.
okay.
So if you can get me in touch with her, I'd be very happy for
Well,
that.
Jenica's right up on High Street, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so if need be, we can walk up. Let me know. Parks, we find out the next date, and if you can't make it, let me know, and I'll go.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Thanks for the update.
That's it. Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions for Ed? Okay.
I just have a good, can I bring up a meeting at PQB?
Yeah, we're gonna say Select Board goes next. You want to lead off then?
Sure.
Okay.
So I attended a PQB meeting on September 13th. The group met to go over, PCFs mostly, but one important thing that's worth mentioning that Ed, I wondered if we could draft a letter up to Roger Ball, thanking him for his 30-plus years of service to the town. We just authorized his retirement at that meeting, and he's given 30 years of really good service to the town, and I think we should honor that.
Absolutely.
Maybe
And-
have him maybe invite him to the next meeting and present it to him.
And we talked about that, and Ed, you're gonna put something together for Roger Ball and invite him to the next meeting?
Sure.
Good. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
I just think it's important that we be consistent with that. We also had a longtime employee just retire from the library department too, so
Yep.
I think if we're gonna have
Absolutely.
a process, then let's be consistent across the board. I don't believe that was, I know you went to that, you went over there on the departmental retirement and
Yes. to the
wished her
library.
well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanna make sure that if we're gonna do that, we should do it across the board.
And just so you are aware, because I know the question was asked, at least according to the records I've seen, that Roger Ball has worked for the town for 34 years.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And to your point, Rini, I think the only way we're gonna know is by the PCFs or if somebody on a committee,
Right,
so I
right,
think we
right.
need to funnel that back. That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
I'm pretty sure the library person retired after 26 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
right.
yeah,
So is it possible to do the same thing and bring her in too?
yeah.
See what we can do.
I think
Yeah.
that'd be a good idea. Yeah. Is there anybody else that we know about? No? Okay. Anything else?
That's it from PQB.
Rini?
Council of Aging had a wonderful event last Saturday. The weather was beautiful, and it was the Go for Life walk. So thank you to the Board of Directors and also the Friends of the Seniors and Joan, our director. People that showed up walked around the town, around Kona Park, and we had a raffle for a free Fitbit, and refreshments were donated from a number of local businesses. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. Jan, you want to add anything to that?
No, I was just appreciate everybody participating. And,
Good.
Joan did a great job organizing with the grant that we got from the MCOA, so
Great.
There was a committee, it wasn't Joan, it was a committee.
it was a good one.
Yeah. So good job. And the open space, right now, there's a combined meeting with Conservation. It was going to be scheduled for October 1st, and representatives from Kestrel were going to come and talk about a fund being set up for people to donate for land preservation in Southampton. And we're going to have to, we may have to look at rescheduling that because of the heavy agenda on the conservation agenda for that, a hearing for that night. But anyway, that's in the works, and we'll let people know about that in case they're interested. Nothing new from community preservation since the last meeting. And Conservation Commission, you just mentioned about the barn roof. That would be great to get that out to bid and to contact Jack Sobon, I believe. And then I was requested to let the public know that the land at the Zipta farm there is open to the public for all kinds of different recreation, but please no motorized vehicles. It tears up the fields. It's a working farm, and the conditions for the grant, which was used to purchase the property for drinking water protection, do not allow for motorized recreation. There is a place to park up on Glendale, so please do that. Thanks.
Jim, do you have anything?
No, I was out of circulation for a little while, so
Okay.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay. Francine?
No, nothing. The school committees will meet next month.
Okay. For myself, there was a Public Safety Committee meeting scheduled for Monday, but it had to be postponed. So it's going to be this month on the 27th, 5 o'clock for College Highway. We're going to meet actually on the property along with the subcommittee that is looking into the potential of the portion of that land for the safety complex. Went to the FinCom meeting before this. We've got some PCFs to go over later, and they're joining us here, over here for our meeting. And those are the two I had. Old business, Randall Kemp, MS4 Stormwater Permit Engineering Firm recommendation.
Good evening, Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent.
Evening.
So as you recall, we were seeking proposals for compliance with the municipal stormwater permit. We solicited 5 and 3 came back. One is far more comprehensive than the others. It's my personal choice of where we should go. I believe Ed put a copy in your packets.
Bond?
Yes.
Time on you.
Yes. Do you have any questions?
You've got 3 quotes?
3, yes.
Okay.
Where did this one fall?
Yeah.
In terms of the total, there's multiple,
There were, it
Multiple
was a little hard
tasks.
to evaluate between them because, like I said, this one was much more comprehensive, had every task listed
this
out.
is absolutely very comprehensive.
Yes,
Yeah,
which gave me a lot of
more confidence.
confidence.
Yeah.
Did they hit every point that we asked them to, or did they
Yes.
do things that we didn't want? And
No, it
so
is,
they were just more comprehensive on what we asked them to look at?
yeah,
Okay, good.
and everything was listed out by task.
Is this the first stage of this, or is this
That,
all-encompassing
the
for the
proposal you
entire-
have
for-
is 2 years.
Yep.
I believe Ed might want to speak on our preferred course.
Sure.
Yes, it's 2 years, and this is another one of those wonderful mandates that's being handed to us. And it's laid out really well, because some of the other ones, we knew what the cost was to get to filing the NOI, but then it was pretty much open-ended from there. This is pretty comprehensive, but I really want to call your attention to is this has an estimated cost in year one, which is this year, of $35,000 to the town, and $35,000 in year two to stay compliant. A bit of a shocker. Now, even though it's roughly $35,000 for year one, my recommendation is going to be to the board to let me sign a contract on your behalf with tie-in bond for task one, which is the GIS mapping for notice of intent for $2,000, and task two, the notice of intent itself, for $6,500. And then once those two are completed, we will move into looking at an agreement for task three, which still it has to be done this year, but I would like to get moving on those two tasks, which get us to compliance with filing for the NOI.
This is all encompassing for the MS4 compliance, so meaning that there's not something that we're gonna be obligated to after this, like in years 3 or 4? Or is this like how far does this go in terms
This is
of years?
just years 1 and 2.
Okay.
And it
Yeah.
builds, every year builds on the previous one.
Okay. For how many years? Is there an endpoint
It's
or
a
not?
10-year permit.
Okay.
I actually have a timeline of, how many years is this? From another municipality provided me with a list of tasks they have, and I believe it's 5 years.
Okay.
So I could go over with you if you wanted.
You have a projection, like year one and year two are gonna be roughly 35,000, about going on from there?
I do not have
No
a
idea.
good idea.
It really depends on what we discover is out there, what they really tell us we have to do physically to stay in compliance. Like I say, a lot depends on what they find as far as our outfalls and whatever. But the first steps are getting the NOI and then doing the actual mapping of all these and labeling of them so we know where they go.
So we may open up a Pandora's box, but whatever we find, we find.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is we've joined the Connecticut Stormwater Alliance, and there are, I believe, 15 other communities who are going through the same thing we are. So at least we have some peers to help navigate through.
Help navigate through and cry on the shoulder of.
Yeah, and maybe come up with some collective costs.
There's no grant funding available for this or any,
Not so far, but everybody's in the same boat with this permit, so.
this is a federal,
It's a federal permit,
Federal
also
permit.
administered through the state.
So you want to go with tie-in bond because it's most comprehensive?
Yep. We also have previous experience with them
You're right.
And
working on the previous permit.
The other ones weren't outlining the test for basically 2 years. They were just outlining like the first couple.
Well, so, yes, and they said they would evaluate it for a dollar amount. So it's,
Yeah, so
That could
you
go a
take
lot
a
of
lot of
places.
risk by doing that,
Yeah.
basically, okay.
there was really two of the three that came to the forefront as far as, shall we say, previous experience, feedback from other municipalities that have used tie-in bond and the other company, which would have been CEI. But as when Randall and I sat down and looked at this, the tie-in bond proposal was much more comprehensive, and we both felt more comfortable with number one, the work they put into the proposal, how they laid it out. Like I say, it was much more comprehensive and not anywhere near as open-ended as the other,
Agreed.
or others.
I mean, this is very detailed.
Yep, I agree. It goes into scope, and it goes into assumptions and deliverables for each of the tasks. I mean, I'm very impressed with it all. The question I have is, for example, on page 3, it says assumptions, and then it says, we'll do this, but we won't do this. And so, for example, will not include information that will be included in the SWMP within the 2-4 range. So who would take care of that, Randall? I mean, is this, if they're saying, we'll do this, but this is outside the scope or whatever, do they assume that your department or you would be filling out where they're clear of responsibility? Will not include information that will be included in the, within 2 and 4 years of the permit effective date?
I'm not positive.
Like, it says, for example, such as the report assessing current street design and parking lot guidelines. So is that something that's required of the federal program, but that's not, that's an exclusion on their part?
It's possible. I actually just downloaded a guidance document on parking lot design on another relevant project that we're working on. It may be an evolving design, and that's why they don't want to give specifics.
Okay.
And one of the tie-ins to this that Randall and I are aware of is that we are going to have to work very closely with some of the other committees here in town, such as planning, conservation, modifying bylaws, I won't say construction requirements, but maybe subdivision requirements, requirements for parking lots and what have you, anytime you get into impervious surface. So that may be a piece of that also. It is going to be evolving over the next 3 to 5 years.
So this is a $60,000 to $70,000 price tag over 2 years, and do you want to propose what fund we anticipate this is going to be?
It was actually one of the reasons I actually started the conversation about three or 4 weeks ago. I mean, some of the pieces are, okay, how are we going to fund this? Are we going to fund it through the general fund? Some communities have put a fee out there on property owners to help fund the new requirement. As we get through this first year and hopefully understand, okay, is this going to be pretty much front-loaded and fall off, or is it going to continue at this $35,000 level or go up? We may be able to make a better or have a better path thought of how we're going to go forward in the future to fund this. One of the reasons of my recommendation of funding task 1 and 2 at this point is it gets us to the point we need to be, but actually when we had started talking about this in front of the Board of Selectmen, basically what we were going to do is use the funds in the highway department for, is it road maintenance? Is that the account name, or what's the account name?
General Highway.
General Highway,
Expenses.
to fund this, and at the time, we were thinking that the price tag would be about $10,000 to $15,000, which the 8,500 falls into that range. After that, we've got to do some thinking about, okay, do we really want to use that highway fund to go all the way to $35,000? Do we want to look at some type of supplemental appropriation, or how do we want to get there?
Mm-hmm. Well, we obviously have a mandate that we have to do, and so it seems like a logical first step, but I think the more open we can be with the public about the funding, the better, only because I know that in a local community, it became a huge difficulty and a big division among the municipality around stormwater drainage fees. So I'll make a motion to approve $8,500 for task 1 and 2 to be funded for this federal mandate for stormwater drainage.
And
It
that
was-
motion include being comfortable with me signing for that on your behalf?
Mhm.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, discussion-wise, I've got two questions.
Yeah, okay, I was just gonna wonder, now, are we actually accepting the contract, or can we only accept that portion of it? So,
We are going to only accept that portion of it at this
portion of
point,
it,
yes.
so,
Task 1 and Task 2 at this
Okay.
point.
Will
I
the
mean,
rest of it- will- can
I mean, the
rest of it-
theory being we are
We're
going to
gonna
move
continue.
on, but we're going to continue, but right now, we're just
Accepting
signing
that.
for Task 1 and Task 2.
How long will these costs be good for, though?
Yeah.
Well, they should be good for at least year 1, which is going to take us, you know,
Is that taking us
through Task 3, so.
So shouldn't we be approving?
And I don't think you're going to see much of an escalation on what they're estimating at this point for year 2, to be honest with you. If we enter into that in a 1-year period.
okay.
So, you all set
But I
there?
guess if
Yeah.
we could get
I mean-
assurance from them that their rates aren't gonna change.
Well, you could put that in the contract. You
Yeah.
could ask them to hold that as a fixed cost for year 3.
Should we be approving 3 tasks or just 2?
I would just recommend 2 tasks at this point, 1 and 2.
Okay.
You folks all set?
Yep.
Okay, so my 2 questions. I'm assuming we follow Chapter 30B. We don't have any repercussions on that.
We have actually, with this being an engineering firm, it's actually exempt for 30B, but we followed it as best we could anyway,
Just to parallel it.
just to be transparent. Yeah, absolutely.
It always works. And another question on the fees, on page 8. It says Ty and Bond will perform the services as requested and as authorized as noted below. We will undertake this work on an hourly plus expense basis. You'd be billed in accordance with standard billing rates, reimbursable expenses, et cetera, but yet the tasks below have a set fee. So I'm confused on, are they gonna do us a time and materials, or is it gonna be that fee below?
Generally, what it is they will bill you at an hourly rate, and it will not exceed that fee that they have listed.
You're saying these could be lower?
Maybe, I mean, if I was a gambling person, I'd probably guess they're gonna come in
Right.
at this amount, but
So we've got to make sure in the contract it says these are not to exceed.
that's to say, certainly.
Well, under the fee language, it would take a written amendment in order to increase them.
Right, but that, they may
We're not
get,
accepting the whole contract.
yeah, but they may get to, I don't know, the MS4 compliance task, hit 27,000 and not be done, and say we want more money, and we don't have the task done. So we should say this task will be complete, not to exceed this amount.
Not to exceed that amount. We can ask for that.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thanks for all the work.
Pardon me?
Appreciate it. I said, thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for all your work and your help with that. Appreciate it.
So we thought we'd put this next one on at 6:30, and I think we're pretty much on target. Hazard mitigation grant is Matt, I'm Matt. Do you and Charlie want to come up front? Sure. So we've got Matt from the Water Commission and Charlie as the EMD. Yeah. It's like walking down an aisle, you two.
Yeah, well, you got issues.
Okay, so we want to talk about the hazard mitigation grant application, and we've got 2 projects sitting out there. One's the water main replacement on the Manhan, and the other one's the emergency generator at Norris. Just a comment, on the emergency generator, as conversations have been flowing around, it kind of says that, you know, is Norris really for the Norris School, or is this a town project? Because really, it's for our people to go to the Norris School in an emergency. So it's not really a Norris School project, it's a town project. So I just want to kind of sway it to center and say it's part of a town project. You folks all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Charlie, you're our EMD, welcome. And there's a time frame for applications, and there's criteria for presenting projects.
Let me bring the board up to speed,
Yes.
because my suspicion is the board's not aware of the fact that we have a natural hazard mitigation plan already.
Okay.
That was put together with Don Snyder and a group of us back in 2016. I think this board would do itself well to take some time and review this. This is one copy. if I don't kick over the water bottle.
Thank you, sir.
But that is the plan that puts everything else into motion. So that said, the next thing that occurred was there was money left over from a natural disaster in the state of about $7 million. So what they did was they established this program to take and allow towns to apply for that money to be used for mitigation of hazards. That's why we go back to that plan again. The situation we had in town was the fact that the water department pointed out to me a year ago now, anyways, about the fact that once that dam was breached, it's gonna undermine that water line out there on Route 10. And that's what's kicked this into motion. Right now, we have until October 1st to basically make a paragraph statement that we're interested in applying for that money. We have to get everything in line by the end of December and submit for the grant. That's gonna be everything from a beneficial use determination to the engineering work and cost and so on and so forth. And Matt can give you the particulars in that. So that's where we're at this point.
Now, for this statement of interest as due by October 1st, this goes to MEMA, right?
This goes to Mass Emergency Management, MEMA.
Okay, so we need the benefit cost analysis, a letter of interest to see if it qualifies. Is that the first step?
No, we don't need the cost analysis until December.
Till
What
December?
we need basically is our introduction of interest, which is October 1st.
Okay.
And that's, in fact, I actually sent you directly an email with just a quick little paragraph
Yeah,
that says,
Yeah,
you know, we
That-
have a situation here that we're interested in the money.
okay.
Bear in mind, there's only about $7 million that's gonna be distributed statewide.
Mhm.
So this is gonna be a very competitive bidding to try to make this happen.
So the water main replacement is what, 1.4 million? Is that,
Right, that includes the main from Fulmer Road through this area and then up to Brickyard.
okay. You want to go over that project first since it's on the list? Now, that one, as I understand it, has been engineered, it's basically shovel-ready. It has commitment from Water Commission for the funding. Is that all accurate?
I wouldn't say it's quite shovel-ready yet, but
Okay.
it's got preliminary plans that have been designed and funded by, I forget the name of the state agency, but the group that oversees the dam removal process
Okay,
went after design money to do the water main replacement. So that has been completed, it's in hand, and then we would have to advance that in order to, start the actual work. But,
how about the cost? I know the grant is 75-25.
right, yeah, we have the operating funds to cover our portion of that.
Out of the water
Right,
department?
Right,
Okay, so that's all funded?
right.
Okay. So what else would need to be done for the water main replacement till it's shovel-ready?
Advancement of the design to, plan and spec ready and get whatever approvals might be necessary from, say, the Conservation Commission or DEP and actually Mass Highway, because we're gonna go up and over the, not over the bridge, but up and on top of the bridge, or on the side of the bridge, and then back down.
Okay. Now, from a application point of view, when does that all have to be ready to go?
Once we submit our intent in October, then they need to start moving with the beneficial use determination, a little bit tighten up more on the budget and stuff of that nature, and then it's submitted. I wouldn't go any further, and Ed, correct me if you see something wrong with this, but I wouldn't go any further with design work or anything until we see if we're actually gonna get the grant.
And when would is that the January 4th?
That's the submittal,
Okay,
We won't know for the grant for a few months after that.
okay. So for the submittal, everything has to be in place, or you just go to a certain point and wait for the?
It's almost like the old rule of 75% design, which
Okay.
they're pretty close into that. And then we wait and see if they're gonna give us the money. If they're not gonna move the money, there's no sense of us moving town money to pay for it.
So what happens if we don't get the grant? I mean, this seems to be a project that people are saying that we need to have.
Right, I think, again, DCR is also chasing money at their end, because they want the dam to be removed, but we can't remove the dam until we can relocate the water line. The issue is, any scour that may occur could blow that water line out, and we lose about 15% of our customers, we lose the ability to serve about 15% of our customers, not only from like a potable standpoint, but from a fire protection standpoint.
So if that gets blown out down the road because it's not fixed, what's the remedy to fix it?
What's the remedy?
Well, I'm
It'd
just trying to figure out, so everybody hears that if we don't go ahead with this and it does fail, here's consequences.
There would be an emergency contract put in place to,
And we'd have to fix it.
Yeah, and
Okay, so it's gotta be
I
fixed, it's
agree.
whether we do it now with a grant,
Yeah.
or we wait, maybe DCR, or we wait and let it blow itself out.
right.
So
Well,
at some point, it needs to be replaced.
DCR is gonna tear the dam down. They're not gonna put a water line in for us.
So we'd have to do that on our own.
In fact, DCR, I talked to Nick there about a week ago, and they evidently got funding to actually do the preliminary design to tear it down. They don't have the money for tearing it down, but they're,
Right,
So the water commissioners feel this is a project that's gotta go ahead.
right. It is one of our older lines in the system as well, so there's, aside from the dam being down, it's on the 20-year replacement plan anyway.
Okay. So, questions on this particular project?
I have questions about the whole process of this. So, and I just want to be clear about it. So, Charlie, you came to the select board and you did a presentation after sending an email out to people to say, MEMA has this grant possibility, and asked about people's interest in it. My biggest issue is I want these things to come out of committee. I want a group of representative people to sit around a table and decide that this is in the best interest of Southampton. This is the thing that is priority in this town. So when I read the grant and I saw that it covered for a generator at Norris, which is one of 2 sites that the town evacuates to, I asked why wasn't that priority over this, and I think at the time you said that this project wasn't, immediate priority. I found out after the fact that it actually is a pretty high priority, that a private landowner has already been received, not really a penalty, but a request to have the dam replaced, and that can't be done, just like you said, until the water is taken care of. So I just want assurances, A, that we don't apply for a grant, that we end up having a huge price tag because we don't get enough funding, and then someone comes back and says, oh, it's gonna cost another $1.5 million. And the other thing is I want people that are involved in emergency planning to actually decide that this is priority over other things. Those are the 2 things that matter the most to me. So if you've had a meeting and you've brought key stakeholders together and you've decided as a group that this is actually where the money should be spent, and it's not gonna run over budget, and we're not gonna be scrambling to try to, give back money or try to find more money, that's what matters, the most to me. I trust other people that know more about water and roads and generators and so forth. I just want it to be done, the process to be done right.
the town had a committee back in 2016. Second page of that will actually list who they were. They set up the priorities. At the time of that, the dam was not drained. So it didn't come as high on the list. As soon as that dam was drained, they put it to the top of the list. If you're asking that every time the EMD needs to take and offer information relative to grants being available to be in a committee, what committee? The EMD stands by himself.
Well, we have a fire chief who's part of the emergency, part of his job description involves emergency management.
Right.
So I'm just saying that instead of just an email out, I just want assurances, if you're asking for support of this committee, to make a decision around what is priority in terms of applying for this grant, because you did come to this committee to ask for endorsement. I just want assurances that the process has been shared and people are all in agreement. This is where we should be, this is the project that we should be applying for this grant under.
So I asked the question again. Do you want me to go to the select board and ask you guys to put an ad hoc committee together to take and review all the natural disaster concerns that could affect the town? Is that what you're asking me to do?
I would say as the EMD, you could bring it to this board.
Which I did a month ago.
Right, and no, I'm not disagreeing with you. And then if we need an ad hoc committee on a specific project, we could put that together.
Well, I think we have department heads. I think it wouldn't be that hard to do, really,
Yeah.
to get some sort of, I mean, as soon as we mentioned the generator, you thought that that was also a good idea. So I just want to make sure that,
The generator is a must. It needs to happen in the school. There's no debate about it. Even that book points to the fact that the school and the church are emergency shelters
right,
that need to have generators.
right.
I acknowledge that.
Now, this Natural Hazard Mitigation Planning Committee, is that still in existence?
Oh.
That was just for a one-time?
That was for that,
Okay.
put it together.
Because
If you
it-
look at the list, you'll see who the individuals
Yeah, you
were.
can see that. It's the EMD, Highway Department, TA, Fire Chief, and Select Board, which,
Sounds like a good group to decide
group
what
right
is a
there.
priority for a particular grant. I just think
Yeah.
it's good to get a little bit of representation, that's all.
so this was ad hoc. So going forward, if there's any information, we can put the committee together ad hoc and, assist in
I
that.
believe that's required every 5 years.
Yeah.
Only because these things take time to address and things change slowly.
But I guess the point is, having an ad hoc committee for discussion and review is what you're looking for.
Mhm.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it does to me too.
Okay,
It's a good
sounds
point.
good.
And the other concern is I just don't, unfortunately, I've seen too often a grant applied for, and the town just needs to know if there's going to be gaps in funding. I mean, right now, you're saying that the water department has the funds. If this is granted, the water department has the funds, so as best as we know right now, that's important to know. I don't want to come back and say that people in this town, we're not going to be able to fund this, all these extra things came up, and now we're, in this place where we have a gap of $1 million. I mean, that's a hard place to be.
I mean,
We've
is
been
the,
there
is
too
the water
often.
department prepared to pay for the delta between, assuming that we even get a grant, but whatever grant monies were awarded, it's, supposedly 75% of the project. If we run any overages and that grant is established in place, is the water department prepared to pay for whatever overages take place?
Yeah, we are. We have, like I said, this is on our, I think it's closer on the 20-year outlook capital plan, but
Okay.
we have the first 5 years programmed in a bonding program that we're in the midst of getting accomplished. So those funds are included in there.
Okay.
So there is,
I mean, because there's unforeseen
Right.
things that can happen in projects like these where you're moving earth and you're moving pipes and they're old pipes and everything else, so, and the grant will be the grant, so there'll likely might be differences than the total project cost and what ends up being the total
The grant
project.
has a 5% contingency for over.
Good.
Okay, good.
And so the pipe would run from where to where?
the 1.4 number represents from Fulmer Road through Brickyard Road.
Okay, so just down the bridge and up the hill.
Right.
Excuse me, but Charlie, you mentioned in your remarks that you weren't going to undertake any design until we knew we got the grant.
That becomes the water committee. All I do is
Yeah.
basically ferry the information from what department needs the grant to Mass Emergency Management to tell them, and they bring it to FEMA for review, because ultimately the federal government is the one that distributes this.
I guess what I'm saying here is that a lot of the things that Reni's talking about, getting at the real numbers, really come as a result of the design.
Mhm.
So how off would we be?
At the end of the day, there's two scenarios. One is we get the grant and it pays for 75% of whatever.
Mhm.
So let
The other
me
op-
stop you there. 75% of whatever, or what the original estimate was?
Yeah, that's important, yeah.
Well, I think it's
Well, no,
important when you
to
hear the second
design.
point, or we don't get the grant and the water department has to fund the entire project.
So either way.
So it's kind of like if we try to go after this and get it, we're getting a majority of it, whether it goes over budget by 5%, 10%, 20%.
Right.
We're still making out ahead of the game.
So 5% contingency, which is good. And if I understand it right, some of the 25% can be in kind by Randall's folks doing work? Is that,
Yeah,
yes?
yeah.
Okay, so that's not real money out of, it's money out of Randall's pocket.
The only
It's
thing
not
we-
out of the water
The
department.
only thing we just can't use the state money that was helping doing the preliminary work for the
Yeah.
design and put that against it.
You've got to watch back this, because when I said not real money, Randall's face went, whoa. I apologize, that's not what I meant.
John, I got a
But
quick-
in-kind work you can do and cut down the actual dollar cost from water, okay.
So Charlie, for this particular
Question.
grant, you feel like the application best suits this water project, and that you feel the generator is absolutely needed, but not necessarily applying under this?
The open conversations we had on conference call, they pretty much told us that they looked at generators at the low end of this. They didn't look at them as priorities. We being the town, needs to go into that school, have an electrical engineer do an evaluation, and tell us exactly what we need and what the cost is. You just got through explaining to me that you didn't want to see us go for a grant and then find out we had shortfalls. Right now, we have no dollar amount as to what we would need in that school, so it would be a shot in the dark asking for money. Based on what I heard for the conference calls, that they really weren't looking at them anyways, I just think we would be
And it's,
pulling away
the
from direction
25%
of getting
of that
money
would
this
hit the
way.
town as well.
Even though they wrote in the grant write-up generator
I know.
specifically? Okay.
I know, I'm just telling you what was said on the conference calls.
I have a
We got a
question.
couple questions. I've got a question too, so you folks go first.
You mentioned, Charlie, that there's roughly 7 million statewide, so chances are very unlikely that we'll be successful. I understand that the proposal for 1.4 something million goes from Fulmer Road to Brickyard. Does anybody know what the cost would be just to address the bridge issue, and is it possible? That's all. Would we have a better shot at asking for a lot less money to address our immediate need, and then later on, replace the pipe? That's all I'm asking.
That's a good question.
I'd say that cost estimate's probably in the 2 to 350 range, $200,000 to $350,000 range, just for that segment at the bridge.
Yeah. I know the pipes are in terrible shape. It'd be great to do it all at once, but if there's only that much money statewide, are we better asking for a little bit, or do you feel it's the right thing to do and ask for the whole thing? So,
I mean, just going off what he said, my sense is if we ask for a smaller project, we may get the smaller project. But if we don't ask for the big one, we'll never get the big one. And if we didn't get the big one and we needed to just repair the section you're talking about, you have enough money that you can actually do that probably, right? That 250?
Right.
Or you could do a debt exclusion and, you know. So we could do that on our own if we needed to.
okay, I'm
Yeah.
just
But it's good
putting it
thought.
out there.
Absolutely. Ed, you had a question?
Yeah, and I wanted to speak on the generator, but let me just follow up just on that bridge section, is that in my understanding is one of the concerns, because that was actually my first assumption was it would just be the bridge section, but because this is one of the oldest sections of water main piping in town, there's a great deal of concern that when they start that, if they tried to do just the bridge section, that it's going to be so brittle and what have you, that it's just going to keep going back anyway, so.
I'd
yeah.
rely on you folks telling us that, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that, but I'm just saying if
Gotta
it was
chase
a
up the hill,
emergency
you know you are.
situation.
Right.
I mean, the pipes are probably kept intact by the earth around them.
Yeah, yeah. 1938 vintage cast iron.
I think it's AC. I'm not sure it's
Really?
Yeah, but to your point, Ed, the extension we did on the Safe Routes to School was exactly for that reason. There, we piggybacked on the state contract and extended that project from where the Safe Routes to School ended all the way down to Gun Road, because once we stopped that work, we recognized that that's a huge problem area anyway. And with the disruption in the construction, we could see that there was going to be several callbacks on that curve. Yes, we did.
And
On the generator?
I was on the conference call on, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I think it was Thursday. And it is FEMA who sets the, shall we say, the priorities from year to year or grant to grant. And yes, they did make it clear that emergency generators, at least for this round, were at the very lowest level that could be possibly had. That being said, so, you know, some of my concerns about the school, and I think we should look at this and figure out how to fund it, at least to get there, to have a plan, whether it be funding through our own capital program or having something ready in the future if a grant comes up. But probably the sizing of a generator and a transfer switch, we could probably do, you know, fairly inexpensively. But the fact that that school is been built in two sections at two times, the original and the newer, the addition portion, I have somewhat concerns about, okay, was the wiring ever upgraded in the old part when they did the new part? Because one of the pieces is, if the wiring that's in the school is not adequate, if we got a grant, even if we got a grant for a generator, the grant will fund the generator, the transfer switch, its own installation. It will not fund having to redo the wiring in the school. That would fall back to us anyway. So that is one of the pieces that I think we really have to have an electrical engineer take a look at and figure out if, okay, is this adequate? If not, what needs to be upgraded and what the cost is on that. But my recommendation is, I think it's a good project. We should probably figure out a way to at least fund a portion of it to start the planning process. Like I say, whether that be to get it on our own capital plan in the future to do it ourselves, or have something ready if a grant comes up that it might be eligible for. But I think we need those specific pieces in place to do it.
Can I add something real quick? Luckily enough, I have a
Gotta
whole
introduce
banker's box
yourself.
of all the information from the school from 1996 when we built it. So we can look through that first if you want, before you actually hire someone, to see what they did in terms of electrical. Just,
I was Vicky Morrow, town
oh,
accountant.
sorry.
Good person just shows up.
So, she kind of photobombed you. So a question, for the statement of interest, do you have to have a cost, a fixed cost, or does that come along in
Give
the,
you an estimate.
so it can be an estimate, can you adjust it in the application development period? Okay, so generator-wise, I'm always of the thought that if you don't apply, you don't get it. So if we put something through for the generator with an estimate, and then went through the process October to January and firmed it up and put it through, what's the worst that could happen?
Well,
They
we'd
say
be,
no?
I mean, the 25% is a cost plus maintenance and everything else. So
We
even
could
if
do a
did-
debt exclusion if it's needed, if the board decides that, we need a shelter over there. And I think, and I'm probably not close, but I think we thought it was in the $300,000 or $400,000 range.
It's not actually a shelter site. Smith Vocational is our shelter site. But what would happen is it would be a place, and I'm particularly concerned about people who are elderly. It would be a place to be warm, it'd be a place to charge cell phones without charging them in your car. So it's an important community place to have, and which is why I'm very happy that we have a bid out for a generator for this building, because it will at least provide that kind of service to the town. But Norris is a much larger space that would allow. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and there's another issue too with the North School. It's not just warming, it's cooling.
Yeah.
And we have nothing there for cooling, so whatever we size for a generator, somebody needs to take into consideration some type of air conditioning too.
In the main spaces, okay.
And when you get into
Main
that,
space is right.
when you get into that dollar amount, I mean, the discussion was $400,000. If we have to pick 25% of it up, that means $100,000 plus.
Right, yeah. We had debt that came off Norris roof this year or last year, so there's money out there.
I'm not,
But if it's not that important, then,
Right, well, like I said, I'm glad we at least have
Yeah.
we
No, that's not available.
signed a bid already.
That was a debt exclusion, I believe, so that goes away.
debt
Right.
We
exclusion
would have
goes
to go
away.
for another debt exclusion, is what you're saying.
Right, but that money in the tax rate is still there until we either go to another debt exclusion or we turn that money back in.
it
Lower the
automatically
tax
goes
rate.
back,
Or the tax
to
it
rate.
the homeowners.
automatically goes unless you
Right,
have
we
another
don't.
So it's already there.
It's gone already,
So,
once
okay.
that expires.
We'd have to put it back up.
Just a little footnote, the only reason these grants are available is because there was leftover emergency money from a presidential declaration.
Yep.
That doesn't mean there's gonna be this grant cycle next year or the year after. What I've been watching, it seems like every 3 to 4 years, we have some catastrophe in this state that causes a presidential declaration, which allows a little bit of money being left over for this kind of work. So
Or
don't,
they use it towards, stormwater mandates.
there's no rain out there.
So I guess the question is, the emergency generator, do we have enough interest that we want to pursue it and put it into this application, grant application, or no?
Well, I know that Aaron Kuchar, the school committee chair, and Aaron Osborne, our new superintendent, did listen to the webinar, but they immediately realized that, like you said at the very beginning, it's not really a Norris issue, it's a town of Southampton issue. So I think they sort of turned it back, but I didn't know what they had to say about it, if it was a priority.
They like the idea of putting the generator in, it's just they realized it wasn't really a Norris issue because it would be used for town use.
If you want my opinion, I would not put that into this application.
Based
Yeah,
on
because
what?
it would, you have to put it in as a total application. You can't do like two
No,
different.
it'd be two different ones.
It'd be two different ones, but the problem is that one's gonna play against the other, and if they're distributing $7 million statewide, and they look at a town that's applying for two, they're probably gonna take the smaller of the two.
It's a possibility, yeah.
And I also
Yeah.
believe that we need time to do a good evaluation of the school, all the safety personnel, everybody else, to determine just exactly what we need in that building before we actually start going forward.
So I think,
The other concern is that if they only have 7 million to distribute, and this project is 1.4, 75% of 1.4 is still a good amount of money.
Yeah.
They're only gonna, I mean, what are our chances of getting 75% of 1.4 million?
The conference call made it clear that they're trying to distribute this money statewide.
So lots of smaller
Not very
grants.
much.
So it'll all depend on how many communities in this part of the state apply
apply for grants.
to trigger that.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing that we don't want to go ahead with the emergency generator for this particular grant, but we want to start planning and looking into what it would cost and getting some idea about that. And Ed could be something he could put on his list of many
Yeah.
projects. Is that what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, but what are we gonna do about the water main? Are we
No,
gonna?
I just wanted to do this one first.
Okay, got it.
So Ed, that's what it sounds like, it's unanimous. We'd like you to look into that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Okay, now we're on the water main replacement. It seems like they're way ahead on where they are with the study. They've got the funding, they've got, you said about 75% of the whole process done, Matt, is that roughly what you said?
The
You have a comfort level to get the rest done?
DCR has 25% design plans done for the project.
Okay.
They have those in hand now, so advancing those is not incredibly complicated.
Okay.
So we're in a better position than not having the plans.
Okay. And from your point of view, from a water commission point of view, we're gonna be doing it, it's just when we're doing it and how we're doing it,
Right,
planned or rushed?
right.
Okay. And your recommendation as EMD is to go ahead with the water, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the rest of the board feel?
I just have one other question
Sure.
to follow up on that. Do you feel that the best strategy in applying for this grant is to go for the 1.4 or to go for a smaller number
I would
to try to get?
I'd go for the 1.4, Matt, if I was in that position. Because if we go for the 1.4 and they come back to us and say something like, well, we can't give you that, and we counter and say, all right, can you give us $500,000? Maybe we can do something.
Oh, that's negotiable? I thought you had a,
I don't
Yeah.
know if it is or isn't,
okay.
but I've watched these things for years, and because it's basically FEMA and MEMA debating it, I'm not saying it's negotiable, but I would still go with the 1.4.
So it's not an all or nothing. They could just read it and
We don't know.
distribute the money.
We
Could be, we don't know.
Could be.
We don't know, but I'd rather argue from a higher dollar.
Okay,
I mean,
no.
You don't know till you know.
That's right.
Yep.
But they've had a private conference call with us to discuss things, which means that the preliminary work we gave them caught their attention.
Good, good.
So,
And it seems to be a project that needs to get done, so, Okay, so do we have a motion, just to put it on record, that we would like Charlie as the EMD to forward the water main replacement for the Manhattan River project for the grant?
So moved.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, any more discussion?
And I think it makes sense because we got an October 1st deadline to get the first paragraph in. So I think we should at least do that, and it gives us the rest of the year to get the rest done. So, great.
Is there any cost associated with putting the application together?
Do you mean
Are you gonna
the
charge us?
actual application?
Right.
That'll be going through the water department.
There'll be a minimal,
But the water department's gonna pay for it.
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other time, as we know, is volunteer. Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? Thanks for all the work, both
I
of you.
would like to say one thing.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder put an awful lot of work in that report a few years ago, and he should be acknowledged for the work.
I think you just did.
I hope so.
Thank you, Don Snyder.
Hey, hold on, John, could I ask?
It's Pioneer Valley Planning has it.
Yeah, he was the prior EMD. Don. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pioneer Valley Planning has it online.
Does it?
I
Okay.
don't know if there's a web link between the Southampton website and that.
We'll
If there
check it
isn't,
out.
I can make sure we do that.
If we give you this and you can find the web link and send it to us? Put it online, yes.
I have a quick question. Change of subject. Back to what we were talking about earlier, the MPO board that you were on. When a vacancy comes about, what is their normal, when do they normally replace? Is it on an annual basis, or do they hold a special election? I'm just curious.
Well, first, our election was sort of out of sync with everyone else's elections because of this. So typically what I've seen them do is they basically have the person that's the alternate stay on there until they get to the election period again.
And when is that?
And that's what they're gonna do, the Roger
I
Fuller.
think it's January, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
just looking, just a ballpark, just, I don't want to miss this
I
opportunity
think,
to have
I think
somebody
it's
from-
January.
Okay.
And then what's gonna happen is they're gonna notify all 17 boards of selectmen for nominations.
Oh, okay, so we'll get a notification.
And then,
So each select board has the opportunity to nominate one person from that board. Okay, and then how is it voted on? All 17 members cast a vote and
Yeah.
majority wins?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's a pretty simple process.
yeah, until you're engaged in it.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you, that's all, I just got a
All
heads
right.
up on it. That's-
Thanks, Charlie. Good seeing you.
It's-
Thanks, John.
Okay, Vicky, I believe you're up. Fiscal 18 revenues and expenses. Are you? You know we're gonna have questions for you.
Okay. Is this along this whole calendar thing?
Pardon me?
Are we beginning this process of the calendar?
I'm gonna put that under any other necessary business, since it's not on the agenda, just so we
Okay,
cover it.
no, I just wanted
It is on there.
about, yeah, it's on.
Oh, I see it, okay,
Yep,
yep,
number 9.
yep, got it.
I just want to do a little introduction, as Vicky's the first person to be reporting
Okay,
under this new structure.
okay, so new business, board and committee report, discussion and proposal. Let's kick it up to right now.
Okay.
Oh, all right, well, so then I need more paper.
It's just, it's going to take a minute, because really,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
what I proposed, and I think everyone here on the board agreed, to start to develop kind of a communication process whereby we would be putting together presentations from boards, commissions, departments, et cetera, that are related to one another. And we would put together a regular schedule so that everyone knew who was coming up.
Yeah,
on
we
that.
did that a couple years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, just to make certain and to put some concerns to rest, this was not the intention to put anybody under a microscope. All it was to facilitate communication with members of the select board, as well as the public who are watching or here in the audience, so that they all know, what's going on, or what are the issues, concerns, or the good news, for that matter, that's coming out of the different departments and out of the different committees. And that's really all it was about, to
Yeah,
get some regular dialogue, and to have those that are related, whether, like tonight, it's all about money and finance, to hear what the other committees are up to. There may be things that you have in common, and you can share information back and forth. That's all it was. It was to establish a method for a dialogue. I just wanted to just say that,
Yeah.
just as a as a disclaimer for anything, any concerns that people may have about the intent behind doing
no.
something like this.
Like I said, we did this, you know, a couple years ago,
Yep.
and we kind of got away from it, so.
Yeah, it's to keep both sides informed.
Mhm.
So Ed, do you have a copy of this from Francine? Okay, so if you can put that into effect.
Could I just ask him, I think it's a great idea, Francine, I appreciate all the work you did on this. The only question I had is, the calendar starts in October and ends in the second week in May. Usually elections already happen in May, so I would just maybe have Ed adjust the calendar a little bit. And also, maybe, Ed, you'll have some recommendations with some of your department heads, but for example, I might put highway, water, and transfer station together, just so Randall doesn't have to come, you know, multiple times. So just to, like, emergency management, I imagine might want to come with fire EMT. So there might be just some adjustments that,
Yeah,
who comes with who.
I'm happy with tweaks, that was
Yeah.
why I put it out there, so that
Yeah.
we can make improvements on, so that's great, thank you.
And one thing we did talk about that, we want to see the expense and revenue reports every month. And Vicki, you'll probably be here every month working with us rather than, you know, a couple times a year. So even though you only see your name maybe twice on here, we like seeing you every month. Thanks, Francine. Okay, so we have our 2019 expense report. This goes July 1st to September 15th. And that's up to date as the 15th?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, so it doesn't include the payroll that we just processed,
okay, today's, yeah.
which would
after.
be paid tomorrow, but we could have posted it as of the 20th, so it only goes through, Joyce sent it out as of the 15th, correct?
Okay, and my quick estimation is that's 2.5 months, so that's like 21% or so, 22%. So if we're looking at the far right column with percent expended, 21, 22% is the number we're looking at. And I don't know if the rest of you have had a chance to look through that. There's a lot of items that are over that, but usually they're small dollar or prepays. And the ones that weren't like that, at least in my opinion, they were below or right at where they should be. Except for the gas and electric for the town hall. Now, we're at 42%, and we're not in the heating season yet. I understand we're in the air conditioning season, so that's gonna go way over. In the town hall building expenses.
So, let's go back to gas and electric.
Yep.
The select board, I don't know who was on that board at that time, signed a 20-year agreement for net metering credits.
Right.
So, unbeknownst to me, I guess, until we got it, was we will get a credit in our Eversource bill, but then we get a separate bill from this LSPD company
Right.
for a certain amount of money. I wish I brought the bill with me, but in order to save processing time, I opted to charge it all to gas and electric. Then I have to do a journal entry to take it out of gas and electric for the town and apply to each individual department. Otherwise, I would be submitting probably 10 to 12 different warrant cover sheets for 10 to 12 different bills for Joyce to process to send to the same company, to hit all those different cost centers, those different accounts. So I opted to, because it comes in one bill, opted to pay them one lump sum of whatever the amount may be, and I haven't done that journal entry yet to take those costs out of gas and electric for town hall and apply them to those different
So
departments.
there's journal entries pending.
Correct.
Okay, so you feel comfortable
Yeah,
then?
yeah,
Okay.
part of the, well, I feel comfortable in that. It's interesting how some of our Eversource bills seem higher than they normally are. I have a whole stack of folders I have to go through to make sure we're getting the credits that we're supposed to be. For instance, historical bill.
2 to 1.
No, so the historical electric pays for the school, the old schoolhouse, the light, and whatever energy is used to run the fountain. Normally, it's $35, $40, even during the summer when we're running the fountain. Well, the bill we just got was $112. I mean, I pay $112 for my house with the air conditioning running. So I got to take a look at all this, but I had to pay those bills, and so they're in there, but I'm going to review them. And when they sent me those bills from I think it's LSPD, LPSD, it just says College Highway. So I'm not quite sure what location that College Highway is. I can probably guess by the dollar amount of the kilowatt usage. You know, College Highway, you know, you're talking 500,000, whatever, it's the well. It's not this building, you know, so I have to go through those and make sure I know which one is which, and I might have to get in touch with them to do that, so.
Okay, so you're gonna get back to them
Yep.
and have them do it, okay. But
Yeah.
At this point,
But at this
we're
point,
waiting for some journal
yes.
entries.
Yep,
Okay. And the building expenses also were way up.
we
Town
paid a
hall building.
lot of money to B&G for the air conditioning to be repaired in this
So
building.
one-time cost that we didn't anticipate, something broke down.
Well, I think it's okay now, but
Plus,
you know,
we've
they were
played,
coming every week, just
Yeah.
about,
yeah, plus we've paid most of our contract
contracts for them.
up front.
Preventive maintenance agreements up front?
Yep.
Okay. A few more months, it'll be cool in here, don't worry.
It was freezing in my office today.
Okay, anybody else see anything they have a question on? I mean, there's stuff like the police equipment maintenance, that's over, but that's prepaid usually, and,
That's over, and what we're waiting for is we got a check for $11,000 back because we sent it to the wrong vendor. We just need to receipt that into this account,
that'll bring it to a
and that will
positive.
bring it to a positive, correct?
Okay,
But they did send us that check back. They called us and said, oh, by the way, we weren't supposed to get this $11,000 check. Where do you want me to send it? Which was nice of them to do that.
goodness for honest people.
Exactly.
I'm assuming software support is prepaid?
Yes. Yeah, if you see,
Those are all near
Yeah.
100%.
yep, they're all paid at the beginning of the year. Accounting, treasurer,
Assessor.
assessors, police department.
And on the revolving funds, they're all zeroed out, basically.
I am in the process of transferring those. I was waiting to make sure all the receipts were in. Jen was doing her reconciliation for June bank rec to make sure we didn't miss anything. Once, you know, she's done with that, then I will take all the end year balances and transfer them to current year.
Any
So
other questions
hopefully
on?
by the end of the week I can do that.
Okay, sorry. Any questions on this?
Nope.
So thanks to the department heads for staying within budget, we appreciate that.
It's only September.
But if you don't give encouragement now,
Oh, no, but what I'm saying is you don't know, for instance, what might come up, what might happen, like the air conditioning breaking, you know, the heat, something happened with the heat. I mean, who knows what could happen, you
so
know?
pretty much half empty that glass for you, right?
That's the nature of being an accountant.
I prefer to look at the positive side. Thanks to the department heads for doing a good job so far.
They do a great job. You never know what could come up.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and
Agreed.
so that
Yep,
happens.
we're already sitting on about a $1,300 or $1,400 estimate to do a repair to the heating system before the heating system starts, so.
Okay. Next, new business, finance update and outlook. Town accountant, treasurer collector, assessor, and finance committee. Since you're up there, Vicki?
Are you guys okay with that? Or you want to
Yes,
go first?
please.
Okay. Okay, so let me start with year end. Currently, I am reconciling receivables with the treasurer collector's office. And those are going pretty smoothly. There's a few accounts where we're off, and so it takes a little while. As much as you think $7.67 isn't a whole lot of money, it's a combination of a whole bunch of different things that are wrong on my end or their end. So it takes a little while to do that research. So we are progressing with that. And once those are completed, then I will be able to start doing my balance sheets for the Department of Revenue, which they have new balance sheets this year. They're trying to make everyone streamline in the same balance sheet. Previously, you know, I could push a button, so to speak, as long as I linked all the accounts correctly to do a combined balance sheet and send it to them, but not everyone has my same software around the state. So they've created a template for a spreadsheet that you have to enter into Excel, send it to them, so everyone, when they look at it, is kind of all the same. And they're not guessing at what they think you mean by this, but they can just analyze it and go across the board. So I'll work on those. There's quite a few of them that need to be completed for them in order for them to process free cash. And so we're working on the year-end piece at that point. I am working on end-of-year school report for the school department. Every year they have me fill out the indirect cost piece for Schedule 19. And I just am waiting for 1 or 2 more numbers for that to send that off to them, which they send in this huge report to the Department of Education. And then, so that's kind of where 18 is at the moment. Like I said, we're chugging along. You know, Jen was new. She came in, so she was trying to get caught up and do things at the same time. So we're working really well with her and her office to, you know, make sure we correct things the right way and not just say, oh, well, you're right or I'm right, and, you know, research everything. Like I said, it takes a little bit of time. I have booked the audit for January 16th of 2019. I did a little bit later this year to give Jen some more time to catch up to what schedules they might need ahead of time, because they always give us a list ahead of time of schedules that they might need. And since she's never done them before, I thought, you know, we could kind of go through them together, and, you know, I'll give her a little bit more time to get those done, because we want to try and get the audit done for March, because in our continuing disclosure, Moody's wants us to have it pretty much completed by the end of March. So the audit, speaking of the audit, last time I came and talked to you about this letter of intent, and that's all it is. It's not necessarily a binding contract. So in talking to Tanya, the woman who is the manager, you know, our lead auditor, the manager at Melanson and Heath, who wrote up this letter of intent, it's not a binding contract where if we signed it and sent it back to them in year 3 in 2020, we said, you know what, we don't want to use your services anymore, they'd be like, we're sorry that you hear that, but, you know, you can choose whoever you want. They don't actually bill us anything until they've done the work, which it states in this contract. But there is a price decrease, I think I mentioned last time, of for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20, which probably saves us about $6 grand. So I think it would behoove us to, you know, just go ahead and say, yeah, we want to do this for the next 3 years. $6 grand is kind of a lot of money at this point in time for the town. And that way we won't be, you know, if we do it year by year, we won't be obligated to pay $2,000 or $3,000 every year more, even though they're doing the same work, because we have, you know, this kind of letter of intent. So, you know, after speaking with her, that's, you know, what her interpretation of, what this letter of intent is. It's not necessarily a binding contract per se. So, that would be, you know, that would be my recommendation. So.
What was the issue you raised last time, though, about one of the things that you wanted to make sure that was in the agreement?
I know we didn't want to sign a 3-year agreement, bind us in there.
Yeah.
I mean, she said that's a letter of intent. Technically, it's a legal contract, and if she's
Right.
gone, what she said means nothing. So we can just put a caveat saying this agreement can be canceled on 30 days' notice by either party or something like that. So that's an easy way, if they agree to it.
Cancellation clause.
Yeah.
Right, but I guess she, well,
But
I guess the intent is here, you know, their fees and their fee schedule and their billing is they don't bill us until we actually do the
Right.
work, and that's what it says right in here. So,
But technically, once you sign
not
it,
really
it's a contract
necessary,
for
so.
3 years.
The last minutes, it says a motion was made. It says the action was that Ms. Morrow will contact the auditor to ask for a cancellation clause and find out what the fee will be for a 1-year contract if that is what the board decides to do. So it's not really a contract, and we only pay it when they do it, so it's a
Correct.
sort of year to year. So they can't honor that reduced rate, nor can we get guaranteed a cancellation clause?
No, so they're not gonna put a cancellation clause in here, because if we say to them in year 2020, you know what, we don't want to have you be our auditors anymore, they're gonna say, okay, great, fine, and they're gonna walk away. They're not gonna charge us any money, they're not gonna hold us to anything. You know, basically the wordage, that's the verbiage that's in here, so.
Does it actually say that if we can walk away? I
You might want a
don't think it
copy.
says that.
Well, I guess the thing is that in here, it states that our invoices for fees will only be rendered based on the work that we do.
Right.
So if they don't do any work, they're not gonna bill us anything.
But
But-
what they could come back and say, we have a contract, you don't want us for the third year, you owe us for that money, or we want to do the work. I mean, that's a legal contract, and, you know, I see a couple hundred of those a year, and it's just an easy fix by putting some kind of caveat in there. Our intention is to go through for 3 years, but we understand that if we decide to get out of that, you will release us with, you know, proper notice or something.
And I guess the question is, if we cancel early, if we don't do 3 years, let's say we do 2,
Mm-hmm.
would they go back and charge us
No,
then
they're not gonna do
that
that.
other rate
No.
that it would have been if we didn't?
No, because this
Okay,
is kind of the letter, it's a letter of intent, I guess. It's not a full-fledged
Okay.
contract. You might see it differently, I guess I see it different than that, and they see it differently, so.
So do we have time? Could we get a copy of that again and we can review it maybe next meeting? I'd like to read it, just.
Yeah, I mean, again, we reviewed it, it's contract is saying, we're giving you this, you're doing that, it's for 3 years. You know, you got consideration, you got time frame, you got everything there, it's,
But if we have the contract, we can all read it one more time. Matt hasn't seen it probably.
Yep.
And then you could put the little clause in there if you feel necessary when we come back.
Okay, they are, I don't think, gonna put that clause in there.
so,
She didn't think it was necessary.
right, so that tells you something.
But you also just said that we're getting close to a $6,000 savings by committing to more than 1 year, right?
That would be my estimation, correct.
So it wouldn't hurt to formalize it then.
All right, I'll see what they can do, but if they don't, then we'll just continue with 1
And
year
just tell them our
and see what
intention
happens.
is to honor it for 3 years, but if something comes up, budgetary-wise or something, we,
Well, in here, it also says based on appropriations. Like, if we don't appropriate $22,000, then we can't pay them $22,000. We're not gonna appropriate 10, but it's based on appropriations also, so. But, all right, I'll,
Vicky, can I
I'll
get
go
another
back.
copy of that again? Maybe give it to Ed and he can distribute it to the
yeah,
board.
yeah.
I'd just like to read it. I mean, I'd like to just breeze through it quick.
yeah, I think I emailed it to you all, but I can send it out again. That way you
Okay, yeah,
have it.
send that again. It'll be,
Email.
I'll
Yep.
take a look at it.
Okay.
I think that's all I got.
Any questions for? Nope. Thank you, Vicky, appreciate it.
Welcome.
Now we have our new treasurer collector, who is happy to be here with us tonight, right?
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Jennifer Day, Treasurer Collector. So let's see. All right, so in our office right now, we just prepared and mailed the fiscal year 19 Q1 water bills last week. I also mailed out the first tax title letters for fiscal year 18 real estate taxes. So that's just the first, well, it's actually the second letter, but it's more official than the first one as to collecting the past due. I wanted to let you know also that last week we collected about $6,700 in personal property taxes that went back to fiscal year 16 by implementing the town's bylaw, which gives us the right to deny or revoke permits. So that was helpful.
Let me ask you on that one, because we're considering now taking that time frame and going from 12 months to a lesser
Yeah.
amount. So this was somebody over 12 months, apparently, under the
Yes,
old law.
yes.
Okay, so was that for building or I don't want to know who it is, but,
It was they just wanted an electrical permit. It was a business and
so we caught him on
so
an
it's
electrical
personal,
permit.
yeah, yeah.
Was that $6,000 plus from one vendor?
It was $6,700 from one vendor, yes.
Wow,
Yeah, so that was
Good.
good.
It was personal property tax.
Personal property, yeah.
good.
Also, the property on 6 Coleman Road transferred on Friday, 9/14. So the town received a check in the amount of $120,113.69 for the taxes, interest, and costs. $113,554.19 is all taxes and interest that will all go to the general fund. And then the $65,5950, that's cost, so some of that may go to the general fund, but some will also go to the tax title revolving account, to help, collect more.
So that's great news. If you folks don't
Yeah.
know, it's the old stripper shop on Coleman Road, the big red barn and all that. And that's
Yeah.
been in tax arrears for how long, Jen?
It's been a while, I'm not exactly sure.
Long, long time.
definitely,
We're starting
yeah,
to
it's like
exceed
way
the
back.
value of the building.
I didn't look at the exact date there, but yeah, it's been,
Yeah, so that's,
Long
that's great
time.
news. We got 120, 130,000, whatever number it was. Now,
Yeah,
the
so, you know.
property is, yep, property is going to someone who's gonna hopefully fix it up and make something out of it and
yeah, I
have
think
more
it's a roofing company,
roofing company.
possibly.
Yeah.
I'm not really positive on that, but, yeah,
It'd
so
be nice to see
hopefully,
the barn hopefully saved and, brought
yeah.
back. So that's
Yeah.
good news. So you started off with sending out tax bills, but you're ending with getting money in for the town. I like that.
Yeah, everyone else is talking about spending it, so I figured I would talk about like collecting some, Figured it could help. I don't know. And then also I just have that, I'm working hard with Vicky on fiscal year 18 reconciliation. I try to come in a lot on Fridays to get it done when it's quiet here because it can be, hard during the week when we're busy in the office. So I've been doing that, and Vicky's been a great help. She's been here, so I can always go to her with questions, so that's good. And then, I don't know, that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Anything we can do for you, or it sounds like Vicky's working, is Vicky still here? Is she gone?
She's gone.
She's gone,
Today?
she's working with you a lot? I'm sure Ed's working with you.
Oh,
Anything we can do for you, or
not that I can think of on the top of my head, but
if there is, let us
if
know.
there is, I could let you know, yeah. So,
You enjoying the position?
yeah, I am,
Are you? Good.
yeah. No, I
Yes.
do, I enjoy it. It's
Going
It's been
after
good.
back taxes
nice
and all
being
that is
back in
tough one.
Southampton,
Yeah.
so I'm happy to be back.
Good.
Yeah,
Any questions for Jen?
No, thank you, Jim.
thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Good news.
All right,
Yes.
we'll try.
It's great news.
The assessors, there you go. How are you?
Hi. Martha Lamy, Principal Assessor. I wasn't really sure exactly what you wanted to know, but currently I'm working on our statutory exemptions for fiscal 19 for those who qualify for veterans, senior, or blind exemptions. We don't get very many new applicants at this time, so anybody who fills out their applications now and qualify, they will see it on their tax bill. They have until April 1st to get them in after the tax bills, and at that point, I think we get more new applicants because they get their tax bill and they want to know how can I save money on my taxes. So we get a few more new ones at that point. I am also working on our FY20 chapter land applications for forestry, agriculture, and horticulture, and recreation. Those are due October 1st for anybody who's watching. This year I did ask for your Schedule F for what you've made or lost in income for 61A. It's not always asked. It's a little time consuming. I also sent out maps, the ortho imagery maps of their property that shows where I wanted them to mark where they are, what they're using their land for, hay, unproductive land, only for 61A, because that's the one that you use for agriculture, horticulture, what's pasture. So those have come in. I've had a lot of questions on those because it's not something, again, that happens every year. And I don't think I will be doing it every year, but being new in the position, I want to see for myself, with my eyes, what's going on. But again, it's very time consuming. It takes a lot of ink. And I think lastly, unless there's questions, is we will be raising our values. The state recommends we be within 90% plus or minus the sale price overall. So we have fallen beneath 90%. We're like based on the property, we're about 84 to 87%. So we're going to raise our values to about 95% of assessment sales ratio. So
what will that mean to the average taxpayer?
Well, the rate goes down, the bill's the same, the rate.
Will the rate adjust, or?
It just adjusts the rate, it lowers the
Okay,
rate.
so you're gonna adjust the rate to balance?
yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, a lot of people will see their values go up, but I don't know how that will, with the override, how that gets affected. But, yes,
So the mill rate goes down, is that what you're saying?
it should,
Yeah.
Yes? Okay,
yes.
okay. So levy evens out.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody at home will be happy to hear that. Anything else?
No. Was there any questions?
Any questions for Martha? Again, anything we can help you with, or, thanks?
A lock on my door and a screen.
That would
I'm
be-
just kidding. No, I think I just have to say that I think one of my favorite parts of the job is meeting with the public. I really enjoy when they come in, whether they're, debating, they don't have a car and they don't have the paperwork they need. I do really enjoy the public, and I do really enjoy. I'm not a Southampton person, but I really like working in the town. So I really thank everybody
Good.
for making it such a pleasurable
Good to have
place.
you here. Thanks.
All right, that's it.
Take care.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Finance Committee. Is that you, John? I think so. Okay.
John Labrie, Finance Chair. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you.
Nice to be working with you. I'm new, just like you,
Yep.
so.
We have a lot to learn.
There's really not a whole lot going on at this point. As you know, John, being spending so much time on the Finance Committee, it's it's not budget season yet, but soon enough it will be. Just to let you know, there's 4 active members on the committee right now. 3 of which are here, myself, I am the chair. Sharon Solakowski is the vice chair, and she also is the Hampshire Regional School Committee liaison for us. Let me step back a little bit. I'm also the finance seat on the CPC committee as well. And then there's Jessica Soares. She's the clerk, and she is the liaison for the Policies Procedure Board as well. As far as the North School Committee liaison goes, it's going to be something that we kind of float around with and see what happens. The 4th member is Claudia Lucas. She is not here tonight, but she is active. Basically, like I said, we haven't had a whole lot to do at this point. We've been keeping up on top of things with the PCFs and the PCFs and the PRFs, trying to work with everybody. It seems like the last few times we get them in just in time for you guys to take care of things, and I heard things from Randall, like he's just happy to get things turned over fairly quick from department heads. They like the quick response. So we're going to try and keep doing that to the best we can. Couple things I'd like to point out is tonight we did vote on the Municipal Modernization Act of 2016. That is what we was just spoken about, reducing the time that a person can be delinquent from 12 months to 6 months. So we do recommend that the Policies Procedure Board or whoever changes the bylaws or enacts the bylaws, we do recommend that. So we think it's a good thing. It's working already at 12 months. Just think how much better it could work at 6 months. But it also gives 6 months gives enough time for somebody that is in unforeseen constraints or whatever to possibly dig themselves out of a position that they didn't expect to be in. So, and lastly, I just would like to ask for your help, I guess, just maybe nudging the department heads a little bit as the fiscal season comes along to get their budgets in earlier, sooner than later. It gives us time, gives everybody time really to get their time to get a grasp on this and make changes and alterations of whatever, and negotiate, work things out, instead of trying to rush things through last minute. And Sharon is our only incumbent member on the board, so we do rely on her quite a bit to point us in the right direction. Vicky's been very helpful in getting information that we need. So, you want to speak? Excuse me?
I just wanted to add something.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure.
Just introduce yourself.
So Jessica Soares, Finance Committee Clerk. The only other thing I also wanted to recognize was thanking John Martin and Francine Tishman for their, while I'm furiously typing minutes, am I supposed to write this down? Is this how I write this down? So I appreciate the technical expertise on writing the minutes and helping us with the flow of the meetings as we all got our sea legs. So thank
Thanks.
you.
Welcome.
Right. With that said, the only incumbent is Sharon, so the rest of us don't know the politics and the procedures, things that we go through to get from point A to B, but we do know finance. So that's one thing that we bank on. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm going to mention something, and only because it has to be mentioned. You said you have 4 active members.
Correct.
You have 1 inactive member.
Correct.
Who doesn't show up at any of the meetings for quite a while now. And
Right.
as I understand it, it's public record, the person sent their resignation letter in, wasn't signed, and the town clerk checked with the elections board and needed to be signed, wasn't signed. Letter was sent to that particular person saying, please sign it. It was returned unopened. So we have a person sitting in a position on a committee that's important, that we need that person to either step up and come to the meetings or step down officially and sign the paperwork, because it's not helping the town. And I just wanted to bring that up, because if the person's watching, I think hopefully the right thing to do is step forward and either come to the meetings or say, I can't do it, and sign off.
And thank you very much for those of you who have stepped up. And I know that one of the members even stepped up in order to help us with the end of the year finance.
Correct, for the transfers.
Right, Claudia. And so I don't know her interest in continuing on it. So, I mean, I appreciate all the work you're doing in stepping forward, all being fairly new, doing that. And I second what John says also. And Ed, I don't know in a case like this if there's somebody that is refusing to sign. I know in the past, different places I've worked, if we try 3 times and document 3 attempts by certified mail or other means to try to affect a signature, then we're allowed then to proceed and appoint somebody. So are you able to check to see what the procedure would be for that?
Janine is checking with the Board of Elections on that. I am of the mindset that at this point, our only recourse may be recall, because it is an elected and not an appointed position.
Okay.
When we talked with Janine, one of our fears is that we were told by our attorney that an email was sufficient. And town clerk checked with the elections office and said, no, it has to be signed. And if we went with what the attorney says, and for some reason we're wrong, anything that new person was put in for and voted on could be canceled out. And it would cause much more problem than trying to get this done. So, thanks for
Other than that, to
all you
guys.
folks pitching together.
That's your problem.
It's our problem. It's our town. Well, that could be a movie. Anything else?
Before budget season, it would be good to have it
Yeah.
all sort of straightened out, especially for
Right.
quorum purposes and so forth. I appreciate you've done a lot to meet right before our meeting and that sort of thing, so.
And, we're looking forward to working together. I know there's been a little friction over the last couple of years, but, we're all in this together, and we got to make this
Absolutely.
happen, so
Good.
one way or another, it's going down, so.
Yeah,
Do you have a
I'd
sense
just
of?
like to add that, I was the liaison until tonight, for the finance committee from the
We
select
missed you.
board. And that's okay.
It's okay.
She misses you.
What do you mean by that?
Thank you. No, but I want to say, I think they're going to be fine. They're doing a fine job. And as he said, you know, they have to go through everything at least once just to catch up, but there's no concerns. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Matt?
I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well. Just to follow up to one of your questions, because it's, I think it's important just to reiterate, I mean, getting the budgets early. Do you have a sense of when you would like to see those? It felt a little bit rushed last year, and I think in order to do a good job, we should
I
have.
don't know myself because I'm just getting involved, but coming from Sharon, she was suggesting February 1st as a deadline.
Yeah, Sharon Solakowski, Finance Committee. We felt February 1st would be good. Last year, they were coming in after March, almost into April, and we did meet the day before the town meeting to get the budgets in order. So I think February 1st is good. I don't know if you have a different opinion to that.
Well, I have a
It's in our
question.
bylaw, actually.
Yeah, we just set up a bylaw, and
Set up a
it
whole
laid this all out in the
financial
bylaw, and I'm curious what that is. I don't recall, though.
That'd be great to see.
I think it might be February 1st.
Yeah, we had a whole mapping of all the deadlines.
Yeah.
But it's got to be the finance committee, the finance team, which includes the town administrator, that whole process. So Ed gets the process going.
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
Yeah, but sooner is obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Thanks.
Just don't want to see us have to struggle like we did last year, because that was really,
It was rushed.
and then having to meet every day for 2 weeks is a little bit, I mean, I know we're all in this together, but we are all volunteers, and we all have life outside of this building, so.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, we do.
Anything else from the finance committee?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Past my bedtime. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion review and signatures for COA state
Well,
formula.
first, we got Margaret Larson.
Oh, I'm
which
sorry, did I
got the
miss?
Report from
Oh, that's right, too.
Hampshire
You
Regional,
were
which
inadvertently-
kind of piggybacks on finance, I will say.
Inadvertently
for the
left
part.
off on the agenda, Margaret. Welcome.
Okay, Margaret Larson, Hampshire Regional School Committee and representative to School Council. So did everyone get the paperwork that I sent? Does anyone need a hard copy in front of them?
Yeah, I'll take a
Jim?
moment. I just have it on the computer. I got one almost set.
You did? So everyone's good?
Yeah, I didn't see, I had it on the computer, but I'll just.
Okay. Okay, so what I presented was 3 different documents. One is a narrative about the budget. The other is our capital plan, and the third item is the school improvement plan. And I would encourage anyone playing at home to go on to the Hampshire Regional website and take a look at the school improvement plan. The reason I included that is that it sets our priorities, and it also determines often additional items we might be requesting in the upcoming budget year. For example, we noticed that a number of students were experiencing severe anxiety issues, and so that made it into the school improvement plan to see how we could work with these students, and were we really dealing with the whole child and not just the academic child. And what came out of that was the need to invest further in the transition intervention plan tips, which helps students retransition into school after a period of being out for anxiety, suicide attempt, and some of the things that we deal with at the high school level. So that was one of the requests that we had last year in the budget, that we wanted to add an additional adjustment counselor who could then help with that. And that has saved us a lot of money because we've been able to pull students back in for that. So that's why I included this school improvement plan. I'm not going to read through everything here, but what we wanted to do was just kind of give you an idea of how we're doing with the current budget and what we're looking at for next year. So the current budget, there's kind of 3 pots that falls into. The first is staffing. At Hampshire Regional, we have a staff that likes to stick around.
So we have staff members that started their career at Hampshire Regional, and 30, 35 years later, they're still with us. So having a mature staff is a double-edged sword. It's wonderful for institutional knowledge and for being able to achieve some of the initiatives that we have as a group, but fiscally it can be challenging because these are more expensive teachers. So this year we did have 3 staff members who left, and we hired new teachers in, and 2 of those were hired at a lower salary, so that certainly affects our budget.
Did those 3 retire, Margaret, or?
2 of them went to administrative positions, and 1 retired. And then we also had the school adjustment counselor that I just mentioned that. We hired the van driver. Again, as a result, that was one of the items that we talked about during the budget process, because that would save us from having to rely on van pool, which costs us anywhere between $90 and $200 a day for van pool to transport students. And so now Southampton can also utilize that van for transferring that student to Westfield Technical Academy, and then Norris can also utilize it too, at a cost of about $35 a day rather than $90 to $200. So we do not know exactly what savings that's bringing in yet, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Vicki about it tonight. So, but I would think that would be substantial over the course of the number of years that we'll have our van. So we appreciate definitely the town approving that part of it as well. So we consulted with the school attorney, and a retirement incentive was offered to staff who've been in the district over 10 years and in the profession over 20 years. So we had 4 staff members who took advantage of that, and we replaced them with staff at lower salaries. So this year we're not going to, realize that savings because we have to pay that retirement incentive, but then in future years we will see that. 2 of those were administrative staff, vice principals, and we have replaced them with 2 new vice principals.
What kind of savings do you think you'll be in year 20?
Yeah, I don't.
Just ballpark.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be because I would go on each individual salary, and I don't. They don't break those down. I can find out though, kind of a ballpark. Let's see. We're looking at cafeteria work hours and trying to make sure that we are maximizing their time too. The principal, Kristen Smitty, has been doing this every year with different departments, looking to make sure that we're being as efficient as we can. So the next kind of bucket we're talking about is school choice. And in FY18, there are 102 school choice students, and for FY19, there's 132 students. So we are getting more students in school choice. We don't generally know what the amount of money that takes, or that we're getting in, because some of those are special ed students, and that money's not certified until a little bit later in the year. But last year the amount was about $700,000, and we're looking close to that, 700 plus when we look at the special ed. So I think right now we're at 650, 700,000 for just the students.
So it looks like you went up like 30%.
30 people, yeah, that's pretty good.
That's
How
a
many of those are
significant.
from Worthington, do you know?
We have a special situation with them, so they are considered kind of part of the district as opposed to school choice. They pay.
They're not
They
represented
pay.
as 132.
I'll have to check on that. I'll double check on that. But I know they pay more. They pay $7,500 per person as
Well,
opposed
that
to
was when
5,000.
we were mentoring their administrator now. They have their own superintendent. So is that still the case?
That the students are paying more? Yes. But they are not contributing to our superintendent for administrative costs. There's still a little bit of sharing, I believe, in the administrative staff, but they're not using our superintendent as a superintendent.
Just from the financial point of view, I'll make sure I got this right. If you have 102 school choice students last year at 700,000, that's roughly $7,000 a student. So an extra 30 students will give you $210,000 this year.
So a lot of it depends on the sending school and what time they come into the system.
But average, that's a lot of money coming in.
It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money.
And you're able to do it without adding staff just for that population?
Yes, so we have to make sure that we can. So we reallocated some staff. So
Right.
there were teachers who were, say, in the middle school that then got moved up to teach a 9th grade class because that's our large class.
That's very good.
So we try to do that. And I'll say that our principals at our elementary schools have done a really good job of making sure that kids stay in the district, but we still do have a number of students going out.
Do we have an idea of where most of these 132 students come from?
The Easthampton and Holyoke are the two
Easthampton.
big ones, yes.
With the new high school.
Well, they're building a new high school, yeah. That might change.
That might change.
Holyoke you can see because they've had issues with
Right.
the quality, but,
Yeah, that might change.
oh,
I'm going to skip down to the final bullet, and then I'll skip back up, just because we're talking about students. So there are 10 students that we have placed out of district, which costs us $763,000, because those are special ed students. Those are students who have a severe disability of a sort that we are either not equipped to deal with, or the parents are unclear if we're equipped to deal with that. So there's been a lot more communication with parents about what we can do, and the staff is being retrained in some ways, and we're adding new staff to deal particularly with students on the autism spectrum. So we're able to keep more students. But you can see that's a lot of money. It's partially funded by us and partially funded by Circuit Breaker, which is, that's money that comes from the state to help us with extreme costs in that regard. And then, skipping up one bullet, the building inspector and fire chief, we came out and recommended some minor renovations, exit doors, a few items like that. Light bulbs, locks. So just a few items. Generally the building is fairly well maintained, and the large items are held in the capital plan, which I'll get to in just a moment. So in terms of 2020, the timeline is in November we'll begin our budget discussions. Late November and December we'll have meetings with our finance committee, which is Tammy sits on that usually with me, which is a subcommittee of the school committee. And then in December through February, then school administrators will be meeting with town officials to discuss the budget. And because our new superintendent is a numbers guy, I think he's going to be right there. And I think that, that's really going to be nice to have that. In January, the preliminary budget is presented to the school committee. There's a public forum for that, so anyone is invited to go. Of course, Francine is at all of our meetings anyway, so she'll be able to report back as well. And then in February, additional discussion, and March, final approval. So if we need to adjust to that schedule, we need to know this now based on when you're expecting budgets.
one thing that came to mind for Ed, for us in general, but 6 members from Southampton are on the school committee, correct? We need to loop those 6 into our budget process from the start so that they're aware of what's going on here, so they can carry that forward. Yeah, and you're one of them.
Yep. Yeah,
So-
and the way it works at Hampshire Regional is that it goes first to school council, and then it goes to school committee.
Probably for the people at home, and admittedly myself who forgot, but I asked you before what the difference between the school council and school committee is.
Yep, so school council is a group of teachers, guidance professionals, the principal, parents, and then a rep from school committee. It is not balanced among the towns. And in fact, we have 5 parents, and 4 of them are Southampton parents. It's just the way it worked out. We get elected.
Sounds balanced to me.
And so our job is to do the school improvement plan. We're the first line of looking at the budget as well as the capital plan.
Okay.
And so then we make recommendations, and we go back and forth, and then that eventually goes to school committee. So we are not an approving body, we're a forwarding body.
Good.
If that makes sense.
Now, does our school committee members, the 6 of you, ever get together
We
on
haven't.
our end of the budget and our obligation
that's
to
probably a good
Hampshire
idea.
Regional to talk among
I'm sure
yourselves?
we'd be happy to do that. Yeah, I think as we refine the whole process, I think that's probably a good place to start.
That's what I mean, if we can tie them into our process very early.
To do that, yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I'm here doing this, so we can get some of those ideas. And if you'll notice on the school improvement plan, what I'm doing now is actually listed on there. So it's one of the items that actually made it into our plan for the year, which is great. Okay. All right, so for the capital plan, you can see the brightly colored one. And again, I'm not going to go through everything in there, but I do want to explain that items on these,
Police and
on this
fire.
plan are budgeted using our E&D, which is Excess and Deficiency Fund. It's the regional schools version of free cash. So as we get money that we're not either using or transferring, doing line item transfers, that's the money that we can use for these capital
So
items.
for instance, these school choice coming in, if there's a surplus of $200,000, you can choose to take that and put it into that E&D, is that?
Yes, now there is a limit to that. So the school regulations say that if that number exceeds 5% of our total budget, anything in excess of 5% gets returned to the towns. We haven't gotten there.
It's a big number, yeah.
Yeah, last year, as of, let's say, 2017, so a year ago, the free cash was a little under 500,000. 5% would have been 700,000, but we just don't get up to that.
Okay.
So for FY19, we approved $50,000 for the visual and performing arts curriculum. That is a regularly scheduled event for the next umpteen years of having to update our curriculum to meet Massachusetts state standards. So we're looking anywhere between $30,000 and $50,000 a year to update textbooks and materials and online access and all kinds of things. We weren't able to fund, based on the budget situation here, technology upgrades, safety upgrades, and a resurfacing of the grounds. So those will have to be assigned in ensuing years.
Those are the green?
The safety upgrades, that is a big topic of conversation. That is to provide a better entrance into the school so that we are maintaining the safety of our students. It's something that's been recommended by the Massachusetts Safety Board. I can't remember their name, I'm sorry, but they came out in emergency preparation, the fire, police, they all came out and made recommendations to us. We just are trying to get someone to give us a decent bid on that and decide what we want to do.
Can I ask you a question while you're talking about
course.
safety and?
Sure.
Do any of the communities that are involved with Hampshire Regional consider Hampshire Regional School a safety shelter?
Oh, that is an
Curious.
excellent question. I don't know. If there was one, it would be Westhampton, I would imagine, but I don't know
just
that
curious.
they do. I'll find that out. Tammy, do you know?
I take it has a backup generator there, I believe, don't they?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay, just a question.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Let's see, and so for the upcoming school year, or fiscal year 20, sorry, we're looking at items that are proposed of $41,000 in technology, $98,000 for history and social science curriculum, so that's a big one because of the density of those texts. $100,000 for air handlers, which is to keep our technology stored properly. They have not been upgraded since the building was renovated, those many years ago. And we're just constantly upgrading, constantly maintaining them. So it's a money pit right now. $67,000 for locker hardware upgrades. The locker hardware is breaking down and no longer locks, and 15% of our lockers are not usable, so this is considered a priority. And then $5,000 for van maintenance, which could possibly be covered with those transportation funds that we're getting from the town. Do you have any questions?
That was great, that was a really good update.
So if you think of something, feel free to shoot me an email. You all have my email now, so I'll ask questions and I'll see what, if we can incorporate more information, and I'll get some answers to your other questions too.
Yeah, and the forward thinking in this plan, you have it years out, so
Yeah.
on your capital plan, and certainly.
And that's really the doing of Principal Smitty. There just really wasn't that much before she came on board. And so she's really started from scratch with the school improvement plan and the capital plan.
It's a great report and documents, thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things I read in here also was that the graduation rate is like 98 point something percent as a 4 years high school, which I think is remarkable considering the state average, and also that Hampshire Regional exceeds the state average in a lot of the various test scores, like SAT scores and so forth. So that's great. Can I ask you just one question?
Of
Can
course.
you just get back to me about the Worthington?
Yes,
I'm just curious
I
because
wrote that on
that's a
my
recent
list.
change where they're no longer paying Hampshire Regional for a superintendent
Yep,
because they
I'll
now
find
have
out
their own.
exactly what they're
Yeah,
paying
so
for.
how does that work, and
Okay.
how many Worthington students are part of the agreement? Because they're not an official part of the five-town regional agreement, but they have a special agreement, so I'm just curious about that. Could you explain one other thing to me
Sure.
on the document, which is the quarterly budget narrative? One of the things that we did last year, there were 3 things that you did, was to get a van, so to reduce the cost that was part of the van pool.
Right.
So am I reading this right? The van pool, which we used to use, charges $90 to $210 per day per student.
Correct.
Now, when a non-Hampshire Regional High School entity uses our van, the school charges them $35 per day. That seems like a
Correct.
huge difference.
There is a huge difference. It just doesn't cost us that much.
Okay, but we offer this service to other towns, or no?
Yes, it's being offered, so Hampshire Regional offers that to all the towns if they
Okay,
need
So
it.
is that maybe?
And
At
we
this
pay
point-
$35 a day, but we used to pay as part of a van.
To Van Pool, which wasn't us. Van Pool was another company.
Okay. I'm
So that
sorry,
wasn't
Why
us.
don't we charge more?
Why don't we charge
I mean,
more?
It was a huge difference, and we're offering this service that we purchased to another town. Am I understanding that right? It just seems like we used to pay $90 to $210 per
Right.
day per student. Now we have a van, and when a non-Hampshire Regional High School
Because I
entity-
think she was looking at it at what it costs for us to transport. So I can ask how we
And-
came.
The charges to us when they
That doesn't
use
figure out
it, it might be more that they pay. Yeah, just be curious.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, does that have factor in the,
How we came in, yeah, I mean, we didn't want the towns to have to pay more because it's not supposed to be a profit center for us, right? If that makes sense?
Well, yes and no,
But
but,
it's our own towns.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
if you-
It's no other towns, it's only the 5 towns who might be using this, and right now it's only Southampton
Okay.
insofar as I know.
But if we're-
Non-Hampshire Regional High School entity, so I didn't know if that meant
Oh, okay.
Easthampton or.
No.
It would mean like if we had a student that elected to go to, instead of Hampshire Regional, to,
Our own student.
yeah,
Yes.
to
That
West,
makes sense. That makes
Westfield
that makes sense.
Technical High School.
Right.
but to cover our costs, if we're paying $16.02 an hour to a van driver, and it takes 2 hours, that's $32, and plus the cost of running the vehicle and the gas and everything, $35 doesn't seem to even cover our cost. So I'd look into that.
For the trip for your particular student,
Per student per
per
day.
student per day.
This doesn't,
So
this says per day rather than per
picking someone up in
student.
Holyoke and bringing them back
Right.
to Norris.
So that's an hour of
So
time.
I'll
minimum.
find out what the, how she arrived at that number.
I mean, I understand where covering our costs makes sense, but we gotta make sure it's covering our cost.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
in the end, there's a lot of savings for the system, which is
Yes,
the idea.
which is,
Yeah.
that was the key, yes.
Good.
Anything else, Rainey?
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank you very much.
Great job, thank
all
you.
right, you're welcome.
Okay, I think we're back on, well, we did board and committee reports discussion. Discussion, review, and signatures for COA State Formula Grant for fiscal year 2019. Ed? No?
Joan Linehan, Council on Aging Director.
Joan.
I guess there was sent out in your package, the formula grant. There is a modification. First of all, we don't need signatures tonight. This particular grant is presented, every city gets a formula, which is $12 per senior per the 2010 federal census. So there isn't, the only initials is the preparer, which would be my own. And after I review it tonight, we'll tweak it and we'll send it out tomorrow with job descriptions.
You say per senior, what's the age that they consider a senior?
Excuse me? 60 plus.
60 plus, okay.
So the first side of the grant is just personnel, and we've added $2,500 for programming and instructors. So we're hoping to develop more programs, senior theater, maybe some languages. more Tai Chi. We're exploring pickleball, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but you'll be hearing that a lot more. I just remembered that I should thank the committee who helped us with the walk, and Renee Groden and Francine Tishman, Janet Kane, and Margaret Lawson, and Liz Plouffe, who is exploring pickleball. And Westfield has it, and it's the biggest sport in all age groups in Florida. It's just going in leaps and bounds, and we'd like to see that in Southampton in the future.
Are you going to explain what pickleball is?
So pickleball is a version of, it's a combination of tennis and ping pong. It's a court that's like a badminton court, and it's a paddle and a wiffle ball. And it's, actually, we're going to hopefully do some field trips to Westfield to learn about it. I've played it. It's fairly easy. It's done with partners. I guess they do have singles too, but it's like a giant ping pong game, and it's very good for, it's not as much running as tennis, and so the ball is a lot slower, so it's very good exercise.
Cool.
The second side of the form talks about other things that we might spend. There's things like dues that we have to pay annually, and volunteer recognition, conferences, and we are, again, we have a couple pieces of equipment in the Council on Aging that have to be maintained, exercise equipment. But it's pretty self-explanatory. We stopped sending out the newsletter monthly because it was $500 to $600 a month, and it was really over our budget. Friends did help us out last year to send it out. We decided we would send it out at least once a year to get people involved, but it's available at the center. If people pay $5, we do send it to their home. It's available online. We can email the newsletters so they know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know who's been doing newsletters the last 6-8 months or so, but they've been great. I mean,
Thank you.
it just, have you been doing them?
Yes.
It's just the content and the way they're laid out are, I think, grab you and they're interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm trying. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Shortest speaker of the night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, any other necessary business that can await the October 2nd regular select board meeting? And I know we had a couple things, Ed, and I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
We've actually gotten, you might want to move it forward since he's still here, under other documents requiring signatures. Now we've got the chairman to sign the SRF loan application for the water department, and Matt's still here with that.
Okay, let's move it
information
forward. Hey, Matt.
Good evening, Matt Christie, Chairman of the Water Commission. I'm looking for the board to give the authority to the chairman to sign at a future date this application. We don't have it completed yet tonight. So some background, the application is for a DEP loan to build the emergency, or not the emergency, build the backup supply pump station that we're planning to build to connect our system with Easthampton so that we have a permanent secondary source of supply. We've received, we're on the list to get this SRF loan, which is a low interest loan from the state via the feds. And that application is due October 15th. That application includes the paperwork, which is what ultimately the chairman of the board will sign off on. It could even be delegated to Ed or even myself with the board's approval, but at some point the select board has to sign off on it. It includes the plans and specs, the easement document that we are nearly completed with the private landowner, and a couple other miscellaneous details. So what I'm asking the board is to, when the document is prepared, be prepared to sign it. The loan will be paid by the water department. It's not something that, well, everything comes to the town.
It's all paid by the citizens,
anyway,
yes.
The ratepayers, this loan program has been built into our new rate structure. So going forward, we've already sort of pre-planned how we're gonna pay for the loan.
What's the total amount of the loan, Matt?
The total amount of this loan is $1.2 million. That's the high estimate, and that includes the pump station as well as rehabilitating the current pump and wet end that we have in our one and only source off of Glendale Road. So basically, we're providing a secondary source. Once that gets up and running, then we'll go and rehab the current well we have, so it'll go back to its original design capacity. So really, we're sort of, it's not a 2-for-1, but we're getting that secondary supply, and we're improving the current supply that we have from a reliability standpoint. The second project is really a mechanics project. We're just replacing the equipment that's been in the ground for 20 years, I think.
I have a question. So this is a backup supply for Southampton.
Correct.
Do we offer backup to Easthampton if they need it? Is it a two-way agreement, or is it just for us? I'm just curious.
It's primarily designed to serve Southampton. Currently, we have a capacity restriction that we're up against.
Okay.
The well, DEP only allows us to take out a certain amount of water out of the ground, and we're basically at that level now. We have a little bit of freeboard that we can play around with. But typically every summer we buy water from Easthampton, and with this pump in place, we're gonna, that other purchase I just mentioned was at an estimated rate. So we're gonna put a meter pit in, and we're gonna know exactly how much water we withdraw and when we withdraw it. The mechanics of if it's one-way, two-way, I don't know. I don't believe that was the intent. Easthampton didn't request that that's what the pump station does, or from their point of view.
I'm just curious. Yeah, that's fine. Right.
Sure.
When will all this paperwork be ready to go?
We should be ready next week.
Now, we have a meeting October 2nd, and this is due mid-October, right?
Right, and I think our intent was to get this in July, because anyways, we're going to try to get it done next week, so it's actually the first in the stack at DEP, because basically on October 14th, they get a slew of applications and start working down the stack.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Once you get back to the work at the Glendale well, will that improve capacity?
It will restore that well to its design capacity, but it won't allow us to withdraw any more water. We're regulated at a certain amount. So we could improve that. Say we could double the capacity of that well. DEP still only allows us to withdraw the amount that we have now, which I think is around, I think it's about on average 600,000 gallons a day maximum.
And the other well is completely not being used at all, right? The other well in town?
The other well is right next to it.
And so we're not drawing anything from there, right?
Right, we can only use one or the other.
One or the other. The reason I'm asking only because, I mean, I used to live on the edge of Easthampton, and there was a pretty big surcharge for Easthampton water. Is that still the case when you use it?
We have negotiated a specific rate with Easthampton. So whatever their retail rate is, we're basically paying a wholesale rate on that.
Oh.
Is that rate more than we charge our customers here, in general?
Is it more than we charge our customers here?
Yeah, what they charge you,
It's going to be a pass-through.
but is that more than I would pay if we didn't draw water from Easthampton?
If we were an Easthampton customer directly, I think their rate is higher than ours.
Okay, so we pay a higher rate than Southampton, but we need the water.
Right.
Okay,
Did we
great.
buy water this year?
We did. I'm not sure exactly what we bought, but we did switch over twice to their system. Right now, we do have
Better than we did last year.
the prior year, yes. Yeah.
I know this is a long shot and probably a big expense, but I believe that the dicarmony reservoir that feeds Holyoke, I know that's not chlorinated, I know that's very expensive, but is that always an alternative down the road that we could tap into that? And
It is. So the town in the, I forget if it was the 30s or the teens, when the state gave Holyoke the authority to take land in Southampton, they said you can do it, but you have to give Southampton X amount of water per day, as long as you're using that reservoir. So we do have rights to that water, and we could tap into that today, but we'd also have to build a treatment plant because it's a surface water system.
Yes.
So, and we explored doing the same interconnection with Holyoke, but Holyoke fluoridates their water. So we'd have to get our town to agree to go through that accepting fluoridation process, which we thought was a very challenging process from a political standpoint.
Yeah.
And Westfield having some problems on that side of town of their system, and Easthampton having excess capacity, it would sort of seem like a good fit for us to work with Easthampton.
So what's the thought on authorizing signature of documents without first seeing them? Yeah, I'm always leery of that, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Have somebody sign a contract with our name that I haven't seen. That's why if October 2nd, we can still see it and sign it and get it out. You know, that's my druthers, but I'll see the rest.
Or has he has suggested Ed could be the signatory?
Be the signature for the town, yeah.
Do you think that it would be ready in 2 weeks?
I'm hoping it's ready on Monday.
So can't we just sign it on the 2nd? Or you
Well,
as
it's
chair?
the second is fine. You want to authorize me to sign it, I'm fine with that too, but I always like to look at contracts before I sign them.
It's not a contract, it's just a loan application.
Well, that's even worse. You said 1.2 million? Yeah. That's a contract to me.
Would you want to be authorized when
I
it's
would
ready?
be fine, I'd go over the contract, I can meet.
Okay. All right, then I move to authorize John to sign the loan application when it's completed next week.
As long as I
I'll
don't find
second that.
anything onerous, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just review it, and if you feel it's in order, I agree.
Can we all see it?
No, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We can all see it. I think that's fine. Yeah.
I think if there are questions, though, it should be brought to the next meeting. I mean, we're not going to deliberate.
Oh, absolutely. If I have any
Right.
questions or anything, yeah, or if you have any questions, we just hold off till October 2nd.
Are you around next week?
Part of the week.
Well, you're
Because
on Tuesday,
I
right?
thought you were on vacation next
I
week.
am Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I am. I'm here Thursday and Friday.
Thursday, Friday then.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah. So I'll look at it, sign it. If there's nothing in there that I feel is an issue, if there is, we'll just put it on the October 2nd agenda. Does that work?
Sounds good, thanks.
Sounds good.
That work? And in the meantime, is it possible to send it to all of us, just so we have it?
Sure.
Okay.
Just send it to Ed and they'll send it out.
Yeah, exactly.
You
And
gonna take
again,
the
we
vote?
can't confer on it,
Yeah.
but,
Did anybody second?
Yeah,
Matt did.
Matt
Yeah.
did, so we're just ready to vote now.
and if we have any questions as individuals, we can point those to Ed, and he can collect them. That way, we're not discussing it.
There you go.
And while Matt Christie's here, he's aware of this because we've been working together, but it's a good time for me to probably update the Board of Selectmen on our special legislation request for the easement in the town of Easthampton. It has made it through 3 readings. It has been approved by the Senate. It is now in the House and waiting to be scheduled for a hearing and a vote.
Great.
In their informal session.
So that piece is critical to our discussion, because without that, we can't build a pump station in Easthampton. It's technically in Easthampton, where the
So we
station's
could-
gonna go.
Put in the application for the loan, and that won't go through until,
Right, yeah,
so we're hinging on that.
right.
Okay, and when do you think that's coming out?
If I had that type of vision, I'd be at MGM right now and I'd be retired tomorrow. I am hoping that it is done and voted on. Of course, then it's got to go to the governor's office for his signature. I'm hoping it's done by the middle of October. When they can send in the application without this, but it would be nice if it was said and done by the deadline of the application process.
So with the loan, if we get the loan before we find out, assuming there's something in it that says we can just cancel it, give it back, and,
They won't formally sign off until the easement is in place.
okay, so they
So
can accept
basically-
the application but not do the official sign off until we know.
Right.
Okay.
But we'll give them all the draft documents we have and
Okay.
shows where we're at, basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah, can I ask you another question about the Holyoke situation? So this was an agreement that was made back in the 30s. Is there an end limit? Is it like 99 years or something? Do you know?
As far as I've understand and read, I don't think there is an end to it.
Okay, but the obligation was that they have to offer us, is it a percentage of the draw, or like, what, how much?
It's a specific amount. 400,000 gallons a day is in my head. It was a amount per person or a cap.
Yeah.
So I feel like that 400,000 was the cap, but I can get back to you on
So we
the
never
specifics.
have accessed it in the history of the agreement?
No, we have.
We have?
We
Okay.
have before.
And did we stop because of the fluoridation issue?
We, in my tenure on the committee, or the commission, when I started 9 years ago, we did have a hard interconnection with the city, and then we ran into chloroform issues that were stemmed from that connection, so we disconnected that. So right now, we're physically not connected anymore, and reconnecting in the eyes of DEP requires, a mountain of paperwork, in addition to the fluoridation issue.
Any other question? Thanks for
Thank you for your
staying,
time.
appreciate it.
We didn't vote on this yet.
You didn't vote.
No vote, so we're just in discussion?
Yeah,
Okay,
to get you
all
to
in
say.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for the reminder. Okay, back to any other necessary business that can't await. I'm gonna put something in there, and it came up with, Rini, it was your thought about we need to do an evaluation on the town administrator. It's getting to be, coming up to a year. It's actually been 8 months. So I asked Ed to get us a little background, and he talked to Art on the PQB, and Art sent him a couple samples of evaluations, and he just sent it to me at 5:15 today, so I just opened it a little while ago. So I'm going to send it around to you folks, take a look at them, and if we can agree to one of them, we can, with Ed, we can use that one, and then we'll start the Ed self-evaluation process and go through the process. So by the time we get to the annual review, it'll all be formalized. That sound reasonable? Okay, great. Anything else that can't wait till October 2nd? Okay. Now, PCFs, personal change forms. We were at the Finance Committee earlier, and we have a couple that were brought down. So I'm going to read them for you. One is Roger Ball Sr., retired, resignation, separation, but he's retiring from the Highway Department. The other is Cassandra LePetri, firefighter EMT. She's completed her Mass Fire Academy Firefighter 1 and 2 training and has achieved her National Firefighter 1 and 2 certification. So congratulations to her. This is same person. One was part-time and the other was emergency.
Yeah, one's on call, yeah.
And then part-time police officer, James Murphy. He's going from auxiliary to part-time officer. He's completed his field training and passed the exam. It's a change in salary because as an auxiliary, he wasn't paid, so he's going to $18 an hour. And these part-timers only get used when needed, and the chief manages the budget, so there's no effect on the budget from that point of view. And so we have a part-time and we have an emergency. And the only issue with one of them was the emergency one for, let me just get it straight, for James Murphy. PQB chair forgot to sign off, but while we were at the Finance Committee meeting, Ed confirmed with Art that he indeed meant to sign it. So this motion will be pending Art signing this particular one. It's just an emergency anyways. So can we have a motion to accept these as read?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Ed, this might be a good time for you to bring up your thought on these PCFs, because as you saw, we had a couple emergency, we had some temporary, and when we get an emergency, we get a part-time or a full-time right after it. So there's multiple forms, multiple listings. So Ed had a good idea. So you just want to go over that, Ed?
Certainly, and I deal with a lot of them and have to put all of them on agendas and transfer them over. One of the things that has confounded me on some of these is it's a ton of paperwork to move around, and yes, I recognize there are cases where, in fact, I believe Mr. Kemp just had one where you might hire just someone under an emergency, but 98% of what we do, it seems that the hire, whether it's a part-time, on-call, whatever, there's an emergency and that for it. So I talked to Art, being the chair of the PPPB, and asked him if anyone had ever thought about amending the form in such a way that you could actually check emergency and part-time, or emergency and temporary, or emergency and what, if it was actually going to be both those cases, so you'd only have one form in that case instead of two, which means one signature instead of two, one listing on an agenda instead of two. It seems like it would be a whole lot more efficient. Art was amendable to trying that, so I'm going to try to work on amending these forms in that way, unless you have any objections to that.
Yep.
Yep, I was noticing that at the meeting the other night, too.
Yep, sounds good. It's a simple change, but it'll save time and paper. If we can figure out a way to do these electronically, it'd be even better.
That's actually one of the things I was thinking at while I was playing with these.
Okay, Francine, you've signed all these warrants, I believe?
Yes, I did. Okay. Warrant number W19-3V for a refund of $396.42. So that's money coming in. Warrant 16, P19-10 for $254,186.67. PD 19-10 for $40,107.40. P19-10C for $1,166.86. And then we have a reversal of that on P19-10B for $1,166.86. And then W19-11 for $56,039.74.
Okay, thank you. Next is minutes to approve, August 21st, 2018 minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at them? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, if there's no changes, can we have a motion to accept as written?
I wasn't here, but I'll make the motion. Accept
Okay.
the minutes as typed.
Okay, is there a second? Somebody's got to second it. Okay. Any discussion, or, no? Okay, all in,
Just a reminder, I mean, there's no change in it, but one of the things that was recommended was that Ed will add old business, any of the TA, to his report, any of the pending things like generator, green communities, town hall doors, zip to roof, all that. So if you could just do that, that would be great. So we keep them on the radar.
Oh, this one, that one's
got
broken.
that?
Yeah, I got half of them.
Okay.
Yeah, you got most of them.
If I was a Major League Baseball player, I'd be making millions.
You would.
And Mr. Chairman, because I have it here for a signature, I do remember, your memory's better than mine, there is one other item we should have dealt with any other business.
Okay, so we can go back to that.
Okay.
Let's finish the
yep.
minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous? Yes, sir. What do you have, Ed?
We have received another one of the disability applications for a town employee. and it covers this payroll period, so it should be dealt with at this meeting. Well, and in generality, so I don't break any HIPAA laws or requirements. We have an employee that has worked for the town for 5 years, is eligible for the town short-term disability policy, meets all the requirements, has the notification from the doctor that he is out of work due to a medical condition. So, as you know, by the bylaws, this needs to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. It does meet all the requirements. It would be my recommendation that the board approve this and allow the chair to sign it.
Yeah, I reviewed the paperwork myself, and it's pretty clear that it's legitimate.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, any discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Could
Opposed?
I clarify one other thing that came up when the assessor was talking? It came up a couple times tonight, the issue about whether or not we, with the Municipal Modernization Act, if we were going to, it made it sound like we have not yet approved it going from 12 months to 6 months, but we did already, did we not?
Well, basically what the board asked me to do, and I started the banter or discussion on this because it had come up a couple of times, and I knew we had the ability to change it. The board had said that, yes, they were amendable to changing it. You would come up with what you thought was fair and equitable of changing the greater than 12 months to greater than 6 months, and asked me to go back and discuss it with the finance team.
Okay.
So we have done that. The last, both our town accountant, collector treasurer, and our principal assessor are agreeable and think it's a good idea to start the process to go to the 6 month instead of the 12-month. The last board I had the discussion with, and I had a discussion with them tonight, was the finance committee. They also think it's a good idea. My intent was to bring that back to you, and some of them reported on that tonight. So the next step would be to make a recommendation to the bylaw review committee and do that, and then the next step would be to put it in the form to go on a town meeting warrant for a town meeting vote.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, calendar and announcements, October 2nd, 16th, and 30th are our next meetings. Open time for the public. Do we have any public that would like to say something? Okay,
No public.
so we're going to go into, and make sure I haven't missed anything, but anybody see anything I missed before we go to executive session? No?
No.
Okay. We're going to go into executive session, 5 executive sessions, and we will not be coming out into open session. So, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 3, discuss strategy of respective collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. This is regarding Local 98 International Union of Operating Engineers, which is a highway department. Second session under the same law, this is to discuss the East Street Bridge. Third session, same law, same section, to discuss Menard versus the town of Southampton and Eversource. Next one, same Mass General Law and section, to discuss College Highway, the former Wayne property. And the last is again under the same Mass General Law, but it's under Section 21A, Number 7, for approval of executive session minutes of August 21st, 2018. You have a motion to go in executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Roden, aye.
Roland, aye.
Tishman, aye.
Martin, aye. Okay. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break.